Hi, good morning, and welcome to the Wednesday, September 18th, 2019 Board of County Commissioners meeting. I'm Kate Flavin, Public Information Officer for Sedgwick County. This morning, I'm very excited. We get to celebrate and honor one of our very own heroes here at Sedgwick County. Captain Greg Peters and his wife were recently recognized by Interfaith Ministries, now Humankind Ministries, for their work in the community. So, Captain Peters, if you can come up and talk about your work and your organization.
Good morning, Captain.
Good morning. Unfortunately, my wife couldn't be here today. She's suffering from Lyme's disease, and it's got her down right now. But it was an honor to receive this award from Humankind. Definitely did not expect it, but it wouldn't have been possible for my wife and I to do that without the other people involved through the Kansas Firefighters Alliance. Most of our people today couldn't be here, but Bill Owens here next to me is also a part of our board, but we do so much for the community, trying to make sure that if someone has a fire, that we can be there to take care of whatever needs they may have. We've been focusing this last few years, the state of Kansas, volunteer fire departments out there, they don't have budgets. And with the cancer on the rise, it was my wife's goal to start doing something to help cancer. And so we started purchasing decontamination wipes and handing them out to fire departments around the state of Kansas free of charge. When they run out, we restock them. It's just something small that we can do for them. Also, suicide's on the rise in emergency responders. And we pay to bring in classes anywhere in the state of Kansas for fire departments, police departments, to try to help families, try to help families cope with losses or to try to prevent the suicide rates going up. We started this organization years ago by trying to purchase coats to put on kids for the wintertime, and it just kind of expanded into all this other stuff we're doing now. Last year when we lost Officer Coonsey, we stepped in to make sure that we had food there every day for the sheriff's officers and detectives so that they could do their job, not have to worry about anything else going on except to do what they needed to do. My wife is very driven in this organization, and I'm lucky to have her because it makes it easier in my job as I serve the citizens of Sedgwick County. But it also, I saw another one of our organization leaders back here, Sheriff's Officer Jay Manis, is also our vice president of our organization. So he also serves Sedgwick County. But it's just an honor to be there for people. I do it every day for a job, but everybody else, they do it because they just want to help us. They want to see us do something better for the community outside of what we get paid to do. And it's just an honor to receive the recognition for that. And I thank you for that.
Well, Captain Peters, on behalf of the entire Sedgwick County Commission, we want to thank you not only for your work as a fireman, but also your work with the Kansas Firefighters Alliance. Commissioner Cruz and I were both at the banquet the evening that you and your wife received the award, and we were very proud of that, that some of our own were recognized. But I think we need to go on a little step further. You also have a firefighters camp, and I'll pass this around to the other commissioners so they can take a look at what you do for the children in our community if they all want to see this. You have a number of firefighters. The way that you get the money to be able to do all this is that there are calendars that you sell.
Yeah.
May want to advertise how that you sell these calendars.
Well, I didn't have a prepared speech this morning, so going off the cuff because I'm not a public speaker. But yeah, Another thing that we do out there is every year, it's usually around the end of school year before it's out, we have a fire camp for kids between the grades of 6th and 9th grade, because that's kind of where we fall short of public education for kids for the fire service. And so what we do is we have a one-day camp. It's usually at South High School in Wichita, and we open it up to 120 kids throughout the state. They come into town. It's a free camp. A lot of different community businesses help us out, like Firehouse Subs usually provides all the food. Each camper gets a t-shirt, and then it's just a fun day, usually from 8 to 5, but they get to do hands-on training with firefighters in the different things that we do, such as high-angle rescue, vehicle extrication, water rescue. That way they get, you know, we focus a lot as firefighters getting into schools when they're in grade school and teaching them about fire prevention. And then we have programs in high school, and this is just to kind of help bridge those gaps so that they can kind of see what they want to do in high school and college, and we can kind of get them prepared for a career down the road. The way we pay for it, like you said, with the calendar. Somebody brought this to my wife's attention years ago about making a calendar, and she was not for that at the time. But then when she finally did it, that's all the funds that we raise with this calendar pays 100% of the funds go to paying for anything out there that we're a part of. Nobody makes any money off of this. We truly believe that the work we do is the most important, so we all volunteer our time for it. But it features firefighters from around the state of Kansas. It focuses on health and fitness. We've had firefighters that make it their goal. We've had firefighters that have lost 100 pounds and gotten themselves in shape so that they can be a part of this calendar. But the thing is, we don't pick them just because they look good. We pick them because they've got a heart to serve the communities and we have firefighters that return because they like the mission. And just because you've been in it once, you're with us from now on. You're a part of our family. So we've got a huge bunch of firefighters. If we go do a community event, we may have 50 firefighters there from the past calendars because they like the mission that we do. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, I believe.
Well, I'm certain. How do they get this calendar, first of all?
They can go to the KansasFireFightersAlliance.org or at our Facebook page and purchase it. We've also got different, actually they can go to that page and we can, we'll put, when we get the next calendar out, we'll have it out there to all the different locations that we have. Spice Merchant's one that loves to sell that calendar, or even going to the Kansas Firefighters Museum. And also this year in the new calendar that's not out yet has got a great looking Corvette in it. Thanks to Commissioner Dennis. It's one of my favorites. So, but they're $20, but the money goes to a great cause. So even if you don't like a calendar with nice looking guys and women hanging on it, they're make great gifts. So.
And besides that, every single photo has a rescue dog in it.
That's correct. We also partner with the Hands of Hope, and all the dogs that are in that calendar have been rescued by people and saved instead of going to shelters and being euthanized. So that's another thing that we like to partner with.
Well, great. Well, you do super things for our community. You deserve the award, you and your wife. We appreciate that. We appreciate you being here today. I hope that we can get more people to buy your calendar, because all of the proceeds go to supporting our community. So yeah. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I will say I have gifted several of those calendars to some friends, and they've been very appreciative.
And you bought it for the dogs, right?
Absolutely. They're adorable dogs, you guys, really. I cannot stress the importance, and just, the smile on someone's face when you give that gift, they'll appreciate it. Okay, we have two very fun events coming up tomorrow at Sedgwick County Park. At 11 o'clock, we will be at the Boundless Playscape with the Sunrise Rotary to formally open some new additions to that park. So that'll be at 11 o'clock. And then at 1 p.m., we will be at the Art Walk with the Arts Council to recognize the efforts that we've put in there to make it a memorable addition to our park. Next week, residents will have the opportunity to participate in urban explorations as part of the Riverfront Legacy Master Plan progress. This will be at Century 2 and the Hyatt, and it's part of that continuing conversation, like I said, of the Riverfront Legacy Master Plan. You can find more information about these events and about the progress and project at riverfrontlegacywichita.org. On the agenda, Commissioners, we have meeting minutes, 2 proclamations, an appointment to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. You'll reconsider the conditional use for a group residence in Hayesville. There's an update from Exploration Place, a donation to COMCARE'S Community Crisis Center, a grant renewal for ComCare. There's a resolution related to at-large appointments, and then you'll have the report of the Board of Bids and Contracts. So, Chairman, I will hand the meeting to you.
All right, Kate, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I want to welcome everyone that's in the audience. We have a full house today. I want to welcome everyone that's watching us on KPTS today and those that are joining us online. With that, I'd like to call a meeting to order for Wednesday, September 18th, 2019. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Invocation to be led by Pastor Caleb Bowman, Calvary Baptist Church in Derby. Please remain standing for the flag salute.
Would you all please bow with me in a word of prayer? Our Father, I thank you so much for your goodness and kindness to us and to our community. And Lord, I pray that your kindness would lead us to repentance. Lord, I pray that you'd help us to turn in faith and repentance to you and to the Savior Jesus, that we might lead quiet and peaceful lives. Help us who have been so blessed by all your goodness and your abundance to us to be able to reach out in kindness to others in need as you have met our needs. Lord, I pray that you would give wisdom to these your servants. Help them to make right and wise choices for our community and according to your will. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pastor Bowman, first of all, I want to thank you very much for being here today for a couple reasons. One, some of you may or may not know, but Caleb Bowman is Commissioner Howell's pastor, and he is going to officiate on Friday at 11 o'clock on the funeral for Commissioner Howell's mother. And we want to make sure that we keep Commissioner Howell, his mother, his entire family in our prayers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for being here today. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Roll call. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Present.
Commissioner Cruz.
Present.
Commissioner Howell.
Present.
Commissioner Meitzner. Chairman Dennis.
Present. Next item, please.
Public agenda.
Thank you. I have a couple pages of folks that would like to speak on public agenda, but as far as I can see, every single one of them want to speak on a group home, and we'll do that during that portion of the agenda. So I want to make sure that we didn't miss someone. If there's anyone in the audience today that would like to speak on a subject that's other than the group home and did not have a chance to get signed up, now is an opportunity to do that. Now, seeing no one, next item, please. Did we have someone that needed to speak? Group home, okay. Very good. Next item, please.
Consideration of minutes. Item A, regular meeting minutes of August 21st, 2019.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Commissioners, everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes of August 21st, 2019. Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner. Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next item, please.
Proclamations. Item B, proclamation declaring Constitution Week.
Thank you. Commissioners, I have a proclamation that I'd like to read. whereas September 17th, 2019 marks the 232nd anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document in its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th to the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Chairman David T. Dennis, and the Board of Sedgwick County Commissioners do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through September 23rd, 2019 as Constitution Week, and urge all citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all of the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves. Move to approve the proclamation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell. Commissioner Meitzner. Chairman Dennis.
Aye. And this is being accepted by members of the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, and my sister is one of those members, so welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning. On behalf of the National Society, Daughters of the American Revolution, I would like to thank Chairman Dennis and the Sedgwick County Commissioners for recognizing Constitution Week with this proclamation. In September 1787, the U.S. was a nation on the brink. It had won the War of Independence from England, but it was losing the peace. The national treasury was virtually empty, the economy was faltering, and national and state debts went unpaid. 13 independent states had to find a way to come together under one government. It was against this backdrop that the Constitution was written. During the long, sweltering summer of 1787, behind locked doors and windows, the men of the Continental Congress devised a plan based on 3 co-equal branches to lead our new republic into the future. This form of government had never been tried before, and no one knew if it would work. This year we celebrate the 232nd birthday of our U.S. Constitution. It is the oldest and shortest written constitution of any major government in existence today. Although it has been amended 27 times over the years, the Constitution still stands as the supreme law of the land. The Daughters of the American Revolution celebrate the work of these American patriots who sacrificed so much for our freedom and way of life. This week, local DAR members will be participating in activities all over Sedgwick County, including visiting schools to talk with students about the Constitution. Again, thank you, Chairman Dennis and Commissioners, for this proclamation.
Well, thank you very much. We all value the Constitution extremely. I've taken the oath, each of us have taken the oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I remember that fairly well because as a commander, I got to say it a lot of times when I got to swear in some of my troops as they were re-enlisting. So it's something that I take great pleasure in, that I was able to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and I intend to continue doing that.
And we thank everyone in the room who has served the country and defended this great nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being here. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item C, proclamation declaring GRACEMED Appreciation Day.
Thank you. Commissioners, I have a proclamation that I'd like to read. Whereas GRACEMED has provided compassionate, accessible, and high-quality care to Sedgwick County residents for 40 years. In 2018, nearly 50,000 unduplicated patients received care at one of the 13 clinics. And whereas GRACEMED provides medical, dental, vision, behavioral health, and spiritual care, along with education outreach, pharmacy, prescription services to help build a health-conscious community. And whereas the charitable and reduced fee care that GRACEMED provides to our most at-risk children and most vulnerable families enables and empowers them to pursue their education, rejoin or remain productive in the workforce, and improve the quality of their lives. And whereas GRACEMED's support of and coordination with a variety of social service organizations has helped thousands of the city's most economically disenfranchised to find the resources and assistance that they need at those moments when their lives are in crisis. And whereas GRACEMED has shown the commitment and courage to continuously expand its network of clinics, reaching out into areas of the city where access to care is limited, and particularly establishing 7 school-based clinics in low-income neighborhoods. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Chairman David T. Dennis of the Board of Sedgwick County Commissioners, do hereby proclaim the day of September 18th, 2019 as GRACEMED Appreciation Day. Commissioners, you've heard the proclamation. Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call a roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell. Commissioner Meitzner. Chairman Dennis.
Aye, and we're very pleased to have Dave Stanford, CEO of GRACEMED, here to receive the proclamation. Thanks for being here today, sir.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and thank you for each commissioner. I'd like to introduce Venus Lee, who's our Associate Executive Officer. When we're together, I normally introduce the two of us as I'm the mouth and she's the brain. So I'm glad to be joined by Venus. 40 years ago in 1979, a group of small church members at St. Paul United Methodist Church began to deliver healthcare services on the 3rd floor of their educational wing. Primarily, their initial target was Hispanic women who were pregnant and lacked access to prenatal care. Who would have known over these past 40 years that GRACEMED has grown to establish, as you said, Commissioner, 13 locations throughout the greater Wichita area, in every quadrant of the community, looking for places where we can provide care for people who lack access to affordable, quality health care. And I believe our next best days are yet to come. Even though we served, as you said, 50,000 unduplicated patients, which is 1 out of every 10 residents of the greater Sedgwick County area, we believe that there's still so much to do. We need to continue to work to provide services for people who are uninsured, underinsured, and lack that access to quality, affordable care. So I want to thank the Commission for your recognition. And also, if you have not received it already, invite you to a celebration tomorrow night. We have opened a new admin center at 1150 North Broadway, a garden spot of Wichita, as you all know. And we have remodeled the old Safeway store that was there, and now we'll be using that as our admin center. And tomorrow night, starting at 4:30, we'll have tours of the new facility. The great Wagon Masters resource that's in this community will be cooking hamburgers and hot dogs, serving at 5 o'clock. And then we'll have a short program at 6 to look back at our 40 years of history. So certainly want to make sure that you're invited to that special event tomorrow night. But again, Commissioners, thank you for the recognition of GRACEMED for our 40 years of service to this community.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz has a comment.
I just wanted to say, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say, I'm so sorry I missed your ribbon cutting last week. I was out of town. I would have been there had I been in town. But I am so excited that you guys have taken an old building and made it new again, especially because I drive down that road all the time. So it was a real pleasure to see it kind of being repurposed. So I really appreciate those efforts. And I just, when I first came and toured, I loved the story. I loved the history that you guys have had in this community. And I just really appreciate the work that you do, so keep it up.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And I want to echo Commissioner Cruz's comments. We're the Board of Health for Sedgwick County, but we can't do it alone. We have to have folks like you all, other providers that can reach out to the community and do things that we just don't have the capability of doing. So we sincerely appreciate what you do each and every day.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here today. Madam Clerk, next item.
Appointments. Item D, Board of County Commissioners appointment of an at-large member to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission.
Mr. Papoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Papoon, Interim County Councilor. The Metropolitan Area Planning Commission is a 14-member board established by joint resolution ordinance between Sedgwick County and the City of Wichita. Sedgwick County has 7 appointments to this board, 5 of which are individual appointments by commissioners and 2 of them at-large appointments. 2 weeks ago, we appointed Bob Dool as one of the at-large appointments, and today we have the other at-large appointment to be discussed. This appointment was discussed in detail at an August 20th staff meeting, and at that staff meeting, 2 candidates were discussed in detail, Dennis Clary and Hugh Nix, and this matter then went to the Board of County Commissioners on 4th of September, and upon the substitute motion of Commissioner Cruz, the matter was deferred for 2 weeks in order to allow the county to establish a policy addressing at-large appointments. So we're here again today with the same item. The recommended action is to appoint an at-large member to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. We have prepared two resolutions, one appointing Dennis Clary and one appointing Hugh Nix. And we leave it to the discretion of the board which resolution you want to adopt, and they are both in proper legal form.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you for that. I just wanted to briefly touch on, so for those of you who don't know, there has been no process as to how these appointments are made. And so historically, because our boards are traditionally made up of men, there isn't really a process. Because somebody will get off the board, they will ask their friend or somebody or a colleague, and they will then be appointed. And that's kind of how it came about. So as much as people don't like to talk about this, I just wanted to make some points that we need a process for this. Point blank, period. There should be a process for all boards and commissions that we have, especially when it comes to a 5-member board making a decision for one person. So a couple of things that I just kind of wanted to talk about is traditionally in government, city administrators make up about women, and I just want to, let's talk about diversity for just 1 second. So diversity is a more complex concept than that encompasses gender, age, race, ethnicity, and other characteristics on which the populace varies. Increasing diversity thus means increasing the extent to which the board or commission reflects the characteristics of its residents. So when you look at our boards and commissions, specifically this board in question, the MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, it's no surprise that we have underrepresentation of our community as a whole. So when I was looking, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Appointments Project, but it's a women's foundation, and it just simply talks about women on boards. So it doesn't really talk about age or race. So I'm just going to address women in general. So what I did was I looked up just the county commission across our state, just to give you guys an accurate picture of commissioners. So within our state, we have 105 counties. Of those counties, our county commissions are represented by 312 men compared to 38 women. That's 12%. That to me is an issue. So if you take our county commission and you reflect those to the boards in which support those commissions, there isn't a lot of information that goes. So at the county level, information is extremely limited, but what little has been collected indicates that county officials like supervisors, commissioners, and sheriffs are those with the least gender diversity. More than half of county boards across the United States have no women at all. Thus, representatives at the local, state, and federal level look very different from their constituents. Why is that? There's no process put in place here. So I'm so excited that we're having this conversation today, and I really want to say thank you so much to my fellow commissioners for allowing this discussion to happen, for a process to be put in place, because at the end of the day, people can still influence who gets on these boards. You can still influence who gets put on these boards. But at least the community has an opportunity to know what's available, when it's available, and how they can apply. Because there's no way that they can do that now. So I've proposed, thank you, Justin, for putting together a policy that kind of will let the community know. We will have a advertisement, I guess, if you will, a notification of what boards are coming up, what the qualifications are, so that if you feel you're qualified, if you feel like you have the time, if you feel like you have the energy and want to put yourself into these boards that are unpaid to make a difference in your community, you will have the opportunity to do so. So just another quick little tidbit, and then I'll get off my my soapbox. Evidence shows that involving women in government and the corporate decision-making process either maintains or improves organizational effectiveness. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make it open and transparent for every single person to have an opportunity to be included on these boards. 5 best practices that I hope that Justin looked at, which I think you did because it's written in here, is to increase the ease of transparency for applying for these positions, outreach in the community, professional development and training so that people understand what they're getting themselves into, formal policies and procedures, and regularly assessing performance. It's just important to have a process. As a regulatory body, we have to go by processes, and I think that we have done a disservice to our community by not having one set in place. So I'm excited that we have one now. It's not set in stone yet, but we are working on it. And that's really all I have to say about that. I just want to say thank you for allowing us to set a policy and a procedure so that everyone can be included.
Very good. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you. I would just like to comment on that for a moment. As somebody that would also fit in that diversity that you mentioned, Commissioner Cruz, I think probably my youth probably lets me be diverse as well, since that was part of the your litany of issues that have diversity in them. But I do believe there has been a process. I know we are changing it up a little bit, but I know I've appointed women to multiple boards, mental health board, the aging board, animal control, and others. I've always had an open policy with people that I represent. They've reached out to me. I was talking to Commissioner Meitzner about this yesterday. He's had numerous individuals reach out to him to serve on boards and committees. We vet them personally because most of these individuals are people that we represent as individual commissioners. There are a few, like the one we're getting ready to vote on, which is an at-large appointment. Appointments like that, historically, when one comes up, I've reached out to Wes Gallion at the Builders Association, who thoroughly vets, interviews, talks to these individuals to see if they want to have the commitment that it takes to serve on a board like the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, but also to make sure that they have some idea of what that board does and some of the technical angles of that, to make sure that we're not going to get in a scenario like I've had in the past, and I know other commissioners have had in the past. We appoint someone and then they don't realize what the time commitment is or actually what the details are of that job. So having an outside entity has been extremely helpful for me, and that goes when I was on the Wichita City Council, and that goes for a while I've been on the County Commission today. So I do believe that as individual commissioners, we have made a concerted effort to make sure that our boards are diverse, to make sure that they come from every area of our community. It's one of the reasons why I was selected by my colleagues to serve on the Riverbank Committee, since I'm the only person representing anybody that lives south of Kellogg, and that's a area that has been historically underrepresented. So if we want to talk about representation, we need to look at regionally where there's been misrepresentation, and that is people that live south of Kellogg, and that's over a third of our community. So I think we need to actually talk about real diversity, not just slick, sexy talking points, but let's talk about the ways that we're representing the people that we were chosen by, or the people that chose us to serve them. And a lot of times the issues are, my mother was an elected official for 12 years. She was a city council member. Problem was, a lot of women don't want to run for office. They have other jobs. My mother was a teacher, very busy, a pastor's wife. But there's also just historically a lot of women choose not to run for office for a variety of reasons. So I encourage having this conversation, but I know I've always adopted a process with every one of my appointees. I'm glad we can have this discussion to come up with a more formal process, but to say there was no process, I think, is incorrect.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell, for speaking about women and why they don't run for office.
I mentioned my mother. It was a personal story.
Well, I will say that women historically don't run for office because they don't see themselves in those positions. Therefore, they don't think those positions are for them. That is historically accurate, and I have a whole 23-page report here I'd love to share with you. There wasn't a process, and you know it.
There was a process.
There was not a process, and that's why I'm putting one in place. And so you can sit there all day and say there was one, but there wasn't. So now we will have one that is formal, that is on our website, that people can apply, and I'm so appreciative that there is one now.
Thank you. And we'll probably talk about this more when we get to item India, because that's where we're going to talk about the process.
Okay, well, I wanted to do it now, so
Okay,
thank
no
you for
problem.
allowing me that time.
Not a problem. Commissioner Howell.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the discussion. I want to say thank you to Commissioner Cruz for raising this issue. I think she's exactly right that we are lacking in the process here. Wichita actually has a good process for their boards. If you want to apply to be on one of those boards, you simply submit an application. I think it's online. I don't know exactly how the process works, but the reality is anybody who wants to serve on one of those boards can learn about that and equally and fairly apply for that in a very transparent process. And so I think it's really quite good that they do that. And I appreciate the fact that people can contact us, but really, frankly, a small network of who we know is not as good, as, in my opinion, is letting this information get out to the public in a very broad way and letting people who we don't even know, we may not have a relationship with them, but let them have access to those opportunities. And so I think this is certainly a better process. And we're going, I think we're going to talk about this in just a minute. This particular item on the agenda is about an appointment here. I'll just say this: there has been quite a lot of discussion about this particular appointment because it kind of revealed the fact that we don't really have a good, transparent process. This name was brought to us through the builders, and I appreciate Wes Gallion and the builders. Thank you for what you do. But my opinion is, that should be an input. That should be a point for us to consider. Certainly not the only point. And we actually did have someone else apply for this position by providing a resume to us. And I'll just simply say, I appreciate both of the applicants to this position. I think they both are highly qualified. In my personal opinion, I think that one applicant actually outshines the other one just a little bit for a couple of small reasons, but I think they're both excellent candidates. And I'll just share my opinion. I'm not going to make a motion, but I really think Dennis Clary, now these are both men. To that point, we don't have any women that have applied that I'm aware of in this position, for this particular position, but Dennis Clary is highly professional. He's younger, and he's got tremendous experience, and Hugh Nix is a very good man as well. He's got great experience in this community as well. So they're both highly qualified. I would just tell you, for me personally, I think Dennis Clary, will be my preference. It's not who the builders have recommended, but they also did say they thought they were both highly qualified. So I think we're all kind of in agreement that both these candidates are highly qualified. I would just share my opinion that if a motion is made for Dennis Clary, I would be glad to support that, and I think he would be my choice, but I'm okay with either one of these men. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz?
We did have one woman apply for this, and we all received an email
I forgot about that.
in reference to her. So I will say that.
Thank you.
I forgot about
So
that.
can I make a motion that we just talk about I now? I mean, since we're talking about that?
Well, we've got a lot of people out here waiting to talk about group homes, and I don't want to
Well,
skip
we've already
ahead.
kind of talked about it. I mean, as much as,
You
I
want-
was going to make a motion to defer that for a couple of weeks. So.
oh, okay.
Do you have anything else? Hey, I see no other comments. Move to approve Hugh Nix as Sedgwick County at-large position to the Metropolitan Area Plan.
You need to have a public comment.
What's that?
As an item, you need to have public comment.
After I make the motion.
Okay, oh, all right. I'm sorry.
Anyway, I want to make a motion for Hugh Nix. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'd like to open it up to public comment then on the discussion of this item. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on this item? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the board. Do we have any discussion from the board on the motion? And I did have a second, right?
Yeah, I second.
Good.
I do.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Cruz.
I did speak with Hugh. He actually serves on my district, my Citizens Advisory Board, and I have no qualms about Hugh serving on this board. This has nothing about individual people. So just want to make that clear because I think that he would do a great job. But again, when it comes to representation of our community, I think that this process will give us at least a opportunity for those to submit their interest. So I am supportive of Hugh. I'm also supportive of Dennis Cleary, but I think I've said enough.
Well, thank you. Well, I've said it numerous times that I've served on the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission before I came into this job, and it is probably one of the most challenging positions that we can appoint anyone to. It takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of study. You have to know intimately the zoning codes. You have to know intimately the comprehensive plan. You have to be aware of the properties that you're considering as you go into the decision process on anything that is involved. It is a quasi-judicial group, so they do make decisions that impact people's lives every single day, and there are truly winners and losers at the end of the day on how the decisions are made. So whoever we appoint to this, and I know Dennis Cleary, I know Hugh Nix both very well. I think either one of them could to fill this position, but I do support Hugh Nix. So I see no other comments. We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Thank you all. And Commissioner Cruz, did you want to vote on? Say that again.
Is Hugh here? This
No,
week?
he was sick.
All right.
Did you want to go to India next, or you want to go with the group home?
Well, if he's going to defer it,
Okay,
it's going to be quick.
very good. Let's go to the group home then. Madam Clerk, next item.
New business, item E, a county conditional use for a group residence limited to operate as a group home for foster children on property zoned rural residential on the west side of South Hydraulic Road and south of East 82nd Street South.
Morning, Dale.
Morning, Commissioners. Dale Miller, Planning Staff. As was indicated, this is a conditional use for a group residence limited to permit what the state calls a group home for foster children. And so that's why the two terms, at least in this case, are interchangeable, although the zoning code has different definitions for a group home than what the state does. The applicant is seeking permission to have up to 6 children or youth not related to the applicant on a 5-acre site developed with a single-family residence. The property is unplatted and is zoned RR rural residential, as you can see here by the green or lime green color there. The RR district has a minimum lot size of 2 acres and primarily allows the following uses by right: agriculture, single-family residences, group home for individuals with developmental disabilities, a church, and a school. The history of this application is as follows. On March 4th, the Hayesville Planning Commission recommended denial unanimously. On June 6th, the MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, recommended approval 7-3. On July 17th, this board considered the application and returned it to the Planning Commission with the request that the MAPC more adequately address the golden factors that support the Planning Commission's recommendation of approval. On August 22nd, the MAPC reconsidered the request and voted to return a recommendation of approval on a 9-3 vote, subject to the original development standards plus a new requirement that limited the site to no more than 6 youth. The agenda report contains the MAPC's revised findings, so you have their improved golden factors in the agenda packet. A motion to deny was also considered by the Planning Commission on that same day, and it failed on a vote of 3-9. The applicant's agent has indicated they are in agreement with MAPC's recommended conditions of approval, and they basically maintain that the use will function no differently than any other single-family residence with a large family. MABCD staff, Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department. Staff has inspected the site recently, and they have approved the on-site sewer and water systems that are in place. And I don't know whether Mr. Labram, yes, there he is. So if you have specific questions for him, he can discuss that. But as you can see here, the predominant zoning is a mix of RR rural residential and SF20, which is the pink or flesh colored. And there you can see the aerial that shows it is predominantly single-family, large lot residential uses with the ag activities here to the east and northeast. The comprehensive plan shows that this is in Hayesville's urban growth area, and so that's why the Hayesville Planning Commission reviewed and recommended denial of that request. Following the initial MAPC hearing, property owners that are located within 1,000 feet of the subject property submitted protest petitions that equal 91.24%. And as at the original hearing that the Board of County Commissioners had, it will take 4 out of 5 votes to approve the request today, because the protest continues on until the case is finally decided. However, today the application can be denied with a simple majority vote of 3-2 instead of a 4 out of 5. At your first hearing, it took a super majority, a 2/3 vote requirement to override the recommendation of the Planning Commission to approve. On this hearing, it's just a simple majority to override their recommendation. And here is a site plan that was submitted with the application. If the request is approved, the property can only be used and developed in conformance with the development standards contained in the conditional use and with this approved site plan. The site plan does not show any new construction. It just shows what's out there today. One of the concerns that was expressed at the Planning Commission hearings was that the property is big enough to establish a second home, and therefore more children could be added because they would have a second house. But the fact is, there's 2 things that get in the way of that. A, the property is unplatted, so it cannot be lot split. And unless the property meets the specific exemptions for platting, which I don't know whether it does or not, but it would have to be in the same legal configuration today as it was in 1958 in order to be eligible for a platting exemption. But you can't lot split an unplatted piece of property. And then on top of that, if this is approved, then they are restricted to what's on the site plan. So in order for them to add any new buildings, or and particularly a new home or additional children, the site plan would have to be amended, and the conditional use would have to be amended because it is limited to 6. The opposition's concern included the following concerns or allegations. The property is unsuitable for the proposed use, partially due to groundwater intrusion problems. The proposed use is out of character with the vast majority of the single-family residential uses abutting the site. The use is essentially a business, not a single-family home. Safety concerns over the types of youth that are expected to reside here. Detrimental impact of the desirability and resale value of surrounding homes if the use is approved. Approval of the request could lead to increased calls for Sheriff Department assistance. Denial by the Hayesville Planning Commission. And finally, the applicant can do the use as it's currently zoned with 4 children instead of 6. And then just to kind of even out the presentation, again, the applicant is making the basic argument that if the use is approved, it will function and have land use impact no different than a single-family home that happens to have a large number of children. With that, I try and answer questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, anyone have a question for Dale Miller? Seeing no one, we'll now open it up to public comment. I have 2 pages of folks that have signed up to speak. I'm going to go in the order which they have signed up. Our clerk has a sign. If you will hold your sign up so they can see what both sides of it look like. It'll give you a 30-minute stop. You have 3 minutes to be able to speak on this issue. We have heard this issue before, so we are fairly familiar with it on the commission. We ask that you do not repeat, if possible, what someone else has already said, because we understand it the first time. We do not engage in a debate from the bench, so we will hear what your comments are and use those to make a decision from. I also run a fairly professional meeting. I don't tolerate folks that boo, clap, and so forth. So I want to make sure that everybody understands the ground rules that I set as the chairman as we go into the meeting today. So if everyone understands that, I'm going to go through and start in the order that everyone signed in.
Mr. Chairman, if I could for a second, and upon the recommendation of Justin Wagner, you might want to disclose any ex parte.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I would like each one of the commissioners to disclose whether they've had ex parte contact and whether or not that's impacted their decision-making process. I'd like to disclose I have had numerous ex parte contacts on this issue from both sides, and it does not affect my ability to make a decision. We'll go by commissioners. Commissioner Meitzner.
Numerous is a good word. Yes, I've had numerous on both opinions and on this, and I'm trying to evaluate the best decision without too much influence from the.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz.
I too have had ex parte contact on both sides, and I'm keeping an open mind.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I've had ex parte communication on both sides.
Okay. Commissioner Howell.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've had ex parte communication on both sides, and I'm keeping an open mind as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Papoon. Keeps me out of trouble. Charles Hacker, please approach the podium, state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
I am Charles Hacker, 1500 East 85th Street South, Hayesville, Kansas. I contend that the MAPC letter dated 23 August 2019 in the case of CON 2019-3, finding number 6, where the last sentence states, further, the applicant would suffer hardship and a loss of income if the application is denied. That should be discounted as a minimum and potentially dismissed for 2 reasons. First, it is projected income. She is not losing her job, and her speculation in purchasing a house to run a business is just that, speculation, and not cause solely for application approval. I contend she is similar to many in the neighborhood in that she purchased a house to find it has a water issue, but she still has a residence. There's nothing keeping her from living there herself. Secondly, she has choices. According to public records, she has another house located at 573 Schoolhouse Circle, Hayesville, Kansas, just over 4 miles away. It was built in 2003, has 1,236 square feet of living space upstairs with 2 bedrooms, 3 full bathrooms, and a 1,202 square foot basement, of which 870 square feet is finished. There are no water issues noted in this area. It appears to me that the 6 foster boys recommended for the home at 8361 South Hydraulic Avenue could be accommodated, and with minor adjustments, even more foster boys could be provided a better environment. From a pure business point, if it were me, I would flip the houses by moving my family to the hydraulic address and putting the foster home at the Schoolhouse Circle. I could then potentially house more foster boys than 6, and my business is not tied to a house with water issues and under government restrictions and review in case excessive rain is the new norm for our area. In other words, this is a choice she has made to stick to her initial business plan with a Hydraulic Avenue house, but she has other options. In business, if the situation changes, change the plan. Voting against this recommendation will not deprive her of her dream to run a foster group home. It just closes this option. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
I don't see any questions. Thanks, sir. Next speaker is Zona Warren. Please approach the podium, state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Zona Warren. I live at 8340 South Victoria. I want to talk a little bit about myself first. I'm 60 years old. I have been with my company for over 40 years. I'm a property owner of many houses, and I have also a commercial building here in Sedgwick County. I also have houses in Hayes, and I also I got my job because they had to meet women in the workforce, so I did get that job because of that. I'll give credit to them. But what I want to talk about is, in the last meetings that I have been to, what I didn't like is there were certain people that sit on the board who manipulated the system in their favor and in their beliefs, and has the authority to control this meeting. And I hope that today that you give us all a chance to speak out correctly and give this a chance to make the right decision. Our topic is about land usage. And then when we went to the other meeting, the last meeting I went to, it seemed like the only thing that they said that we had going for us was the number 8 rule, and that's opposition of the neighborhood. And that is not true. There are so many things when you start from 1 going down that we meet every criteria that says that this home should not be there. When it says character of neighborhood, we are turning this into a 24/7 convenient lodging area for 6 kids. I am for the foster care. I came out of a broken family. I am a product of a broken family. And I lived with many families before my parents raised me, and I'm thankful for that. But what I want to say is, when I was 12, that was the first time I had a slumber party. So when we start talking about foster care, I love foster care, but I do not believe in an institute. And we're setting this up as an institute, a 24/7, where kids can come through 24/7, and then also they have a staff that is there 24/7. So you don't have a family setting. I believe in a family setting. I was raised in a family setting in the last years of my teenage life. So when we start talking about is it suitable for property, who knows what's suitable when this didn't even sit vacant? It did not even sit vacant. So how do we know what's suitable for this property? So if you allow this property, when we go to the third world, if you allow this property to act as a root home, it does surround our property. 8 properties come up for sale. Why is that? Flooding? Is it because of what? You know, is it because of this home? The length of time the property was set empty? None. It's never set empty. It came back. So it hasn't affected anything. When we talk about health and safety, it is on a busy street. Hello? And when she said that these kids won't go outside, does that bother somebody? I want my kids to go outside. I don't know about the rest of you, but I think that is vitamin D, and we don't need kids with carpal tunnel and blindness because being on computers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I don't see any questions. Thank you. Next speaker is Nick Warren. State your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Nick Warren. I live at 8340 South Victoria, directly behind the property on South Hydraulic. Been there for 32 years. There's very little I can tell you today that you haven't already heard. But I would like to address a question brought up by one of the commissioners at our last MAPC meeting. The question was, has anything been done to the property lately? The answer is yes. The yard has been mowed. The 4 acres south of the property has been mowed. Some wood walls have been removed from the basement. I don't know if that means it's getting filled in or not. Don't know at this point. Also, I find it interesting that the entire deck has been torn off the back of the house. Why, I don't know. I have been a member of MAPCD for over 41 years. I'm a former member of the Wichita Area Builders Association. I can tell you, by removing the deck, the house is in code violation. All exit doors in the rear of the house are not up to code. There are no steps, landings, or handrails. Also, the septic system is in code violation. It is designed for a single-family use only. I have been in contact with Tim Wagner at MABCD. He's aware of this issue. My point is this. This is a very high-maintenance property. No one on the staff or Mrs. Henschel knows what to do when the power goes out, or a pump stops working, or the water well stops pumping into the house, or the septic backs up into the house. All my neighbors here today and myself have backup generators. We have learned how to quickly hook these generators up to keep the sump pumps running and lights on. No one on the staff will know what to do when this happens, and we do lose power often in our neighborhood. We only have a few minutes to hook these generators up and keep these sump pumps running and keep lights on. I don't know if they even have a generator over there, but it has to be someone who knows how to hook it up quickly and get it running. Also, the former owners of this property got fed up with all the problems and sold it at auction. Okay. This very high maintenance property is not a good location for a foster home. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any questions from the bench. Thank you.
Okay.
Next speaker is Larry 80. State your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Larry Oddie from Derby, Kansas, and thank you, Commissioners, for hearing us again. I just wanted to start by saying that, I think this issue boils down to a county need because there's just simply not enough homes daily to provide the care and shelter for all the foster youth in our county. Maybe it's okay with some, maybe it's some just don't care, but there are children with no place to spend the night, no bed to sleep in, no personal items of comfort, no private bath to clean up, and no one to share their story with. How is it that we can turn a cold shoulder to those that don't have a family to guide and nurture them in these formative years? That's why we're here today, to address this need and allow this family to take into her home 2 additional young people. We've all heard statements of conflicting information, most of them being incorrect information, and as a result, we're all stirred up and pitted neighbor against neighbor. Presently, Andrea's home is a residential home that has 7 individuals living in it. The proposed request will result in this home having 6 individuals living in it, with 1 additional trained supervisor to monitor activity. Still, a total of 7. Not one of you have witnessed any criminal activity in and around the Henschel home. There aren't any thieves, felons, rapists, or acts of misbehavior other than normal young people misbehavior in her home. Even though so many have stated that or implied that this is the type of young people that there will be residing there, this is not a true statement. To date, Andrea has and will be totally able to screen the potential individuals that will reside in her home. I ask that you, our county commissioners, approve this conditional use request and help put some family structure and care into the lives of 2 more young people in Sedgwick County. Thank you.
Mr. Oddie, thank you very much. I don't see any questions. Next is Trudy Rupert. Please approach the podium, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Trudy Rupert. Thank you for letting me speak. I live at 8121 South Hydraulic. I'm here to talk about the Golden Rule number 8, opposition or support of the neighborhood. As you probably know, and you've heard several times, we have 91.24% of the homeowners who have signed official petitions rejecting the rezoning of this application. 91.24. That's a lot. So please remember that number. We have over 300 additional signatures that are unofficial petitions in the neighborhood, over 1,000 feet. Clearly, the citizens are asking for you not to approve this. It will change the character of our residential single-family home. Rezoning will change the landscape of the area, and forever it will be changed. We're here for the rezoning. We don't want it rezoned. And yes, there is no 24-hour business in that area. Currently, there is a licensed daycare. It does not operate 24 hours a day. It's not staffed 24 hours a day. It's a private daycare. The homeowners live there. It didn't require a rezoning application. So in closing, out of respect for each of you, county commissioners, we could have brought over 100 people here to talk about this, because we had many, many people call and say, I'll speak. And we said, no, we don't need that, and you don't need that. But we chose to respect your time, and so you can move on to more important issues. So I'm begging you, we can't get the issue of the water resolved out there. We don't want the rezoning out there either, because this opens many doors. When you rezone something, it's a floodgate open. So I'm asking for a call of action to please vote no for the rezoning. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't see any questions. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Chuck Rupert. Please approach the podium. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Charles Rupert. Everybody calls me Chuck. I live at 8121 South Hydraulic, and I'm up here to let you know that 14 years ago, me and my wife built a home in a residential neighborhood. We'd like to keep it that way. I'm hoping that you won't rezone it. That's about all I've got to say. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. Next speaker, I'm going to have trouble reading. Davian Johnson, something along that line.
Yeah.
Who is it?
Yeah. I think it's that Lane.
I'm sorry, I just can't read it.
I should have been a doctor.
State your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Damian Lehman, Wichita, Kansas.
Good, thank you.
And I'm here to support Andrea Hinchel's character. I've known Andrea for over 15 years. She's been a loyal friend, very caring person, very selfless. But I think the thing that I'd like to talk about today, which I think defines her more than anything, is her 2 oldest children, Nathan and, oh, I'm nervous, sorry. Austin. Sorry. I've known both these boys for 15 years. I've watched them grow. I mean, these gentlemen are kind, generous. They also are sensitive to the fact that there's others that are less fortunate than themselves, you know, and I believe that they've learned that through their watching their mom support different charities such as Harbor House, the Cure for Cancer, and, you know, her mom also opens up her doors to local charities, you know, youth baseball, letting, you know, people that could not afford to come to these camps stay at her house. You know, their boys too turned very smart, very diligent, hard workers. Both have worked for me in the past, and I just believe that, you know, that comes from, you know, great parenting. And, you know, the hardest thing I think that we can do as parents is just, you know, make great decisions, and those are the decisions that are the most important. So I think she's made a lot of great decisions. Just take a look at her 2 boys. That's it.
Thanks, sir. I don't see any questions. Next one is Tony Rylepath.
Tanya.
Tanya, I'm sorry. Tanya.
Oh, can I have a minute? I'm making some adjustments. Can you come back to me, please?
We can.
Thank you.
Kelly Chapman. Please state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Kelly Chapman, and I live at 8326 South Victoria. And first off, I'm Jim Howell. I would like to offer the condolences of my family to your family in the loss of your mother. I'd like to address Golden Rule number 3 to the extent of which the removal of restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby properties. Please don't try to tell us that the rezoning of this home from rural residential to conditional use so she can run a business isn't going to affect our neighborhood. It's already affecting our neighborhood. We are witnessing it firsthand. There is already an attempted mass exodus out of our neighborhood. We've had neighbors tell us that they're selling now because they don't want to wait until this business goes into our neighborhood and runs down the value of their home. We are already experiencing a negative impact to our neighborhood. We are losing good neighbors right now. I worked with a real estate agent last night until midnight. We have had 12 houses go up for sale within 5 blocks of her home in the last, just a little over 2 months. That's a lot. Let me tell you, those kind of numbers are unheard of in our neighborhood. On our block, we've had 1 house sell in the last 17 years. This is not normally a high turnover area. We have other neighbors that say if this rezoning application goes through, that they will be putting their houses up for sale too. It's pretty sad. Don't tell me that the rezoning of this home into a business isn't going to affect the values of our properties. Are you kidding me? Any idiot can tell you that a glutton of houses for sale in one area is not only going to raise a red flag to potential home buyers, it also has incredible potential to drive the prices down of our homes. It's a simple supply and demand issue. Because we in our neighborhood have come to you, and I know some of you have changed, but David Spears, I know we've come to you many times. Tom Stoltz, we've been before you. Jim Howe, you've been here when we've come before you, pleading year after year. When we flooded, we have come to you as a neighborhood and asked for help. You know we have. You know we already deal with extremely high water table in our area that causes the majority of us to have pretty devastating and quite expensive flooding in our basements. I don't care what she says, and I don't care what anybody she hires says. We live it. We've lived it for decades. You know we've sat in meetings with you. You've taken our calls, our letters, asking for help for years. Some of you have even toured some of the homes in this neighborhood because of the flooding issues. There has been documented years of property tax relief for our neighborhood from the Sedgwick County Appraiser's Office because of the flooding. You also know that this type of flooding that comes from beneath our homes is different than any other kind of flooding. It's not the same. It's coming from below the ground, and it's not even recognized by FEMA or any insurance company as flooding. Therefore, we cannot, and we do not get any insurance, financial relief, or FEMA disaster relief ever. We take it on the chin. You know that we already struggle. We already have a black eye. We are asking you, we are pleading with you to have mercy on an already struggling neighborhood in South Sedgwick County that cannot take any more blows. Please do not approve the dismantling of our neighborhood and rural residential zoning. Thank you.
Commissioner Cruz has a question.
You mentioned that 12 houses have gone up. Is any of that related to flooding?
My house hasn't gone up for sale.
Well, you speak
personally.
You're speaking to
Because I looked at the MLS listings for the last 4 months last night with a real estate agent.
I'm just wondering if that has any indication or any correlation with why houses are going up for sale because of extensive flooding.
I'm not in the position to answer why everybody's put their house up for sale, except for there's neighbors on our block that have already sold and moved last week. They're getting out before it gets worse. Then they never flooded. They're the last ones to build, and they're high and never experienced their sump pumps running. So the flooding had nothing to do with it.
So you mentioned you're not really sure why people are moving. You just know that there are 12 houses going up for sale.
I know it's very unusual for us to have 12 houses within 5 blocks of that property to come up for sale in 2 months.
I don't argue that. I'm just saying that could that be a possibility in your opinion, since we did have so much water?
Everybody here is weary of the water problems and this problem.
I'm just
asking.
asking.
I'm sure it all plays in a part.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Howell has a question.
I did speak with somebody about
You're
that.
up next.
Okay. Can I have a minute, though, to address that
Ms.
before I
Chapman, I
start?
have a
No.
question for you as well.
Have a seat.
Ms. Chapman, I have a comment. Thank you, number one, thank you for your kind words of compassion towards me and my family. Appreciate
They're
that very
sincere.
much. You said something during your testimony, I want to just clarify what you said, because I'm not sure I heard it exactly. So you said something about property tax relief because of the flooding. Can you please elaborate? Did you say that, and exactly what do you mean by that?
Yes, I did say that because we experienced it.
Just what do you mean by property tax relief? I mean, they changed the value of the home, or was this?
They lowered our property taxes due to the fact that we had basements that were out of commission. We had square footage that wasn't usable anymore.
Right. So, I understand. Okay, that's what I thought that meant. Oh, I did it again. I apologize. I turned my microphone off because I was coughing. Just to repeat the question in your answer. I asked about whether the property tax relief was based on property values or was there something else in place, and you answered the question. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll go back to Tanya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On that topic, I did speak with a realtor, and she said that from the time that the property started the water issues to the time that this conditional use started, they can't make that determination. It was too soon. I did ask about that to try and get an answer, and they said that the time frame is too close to when the water started to when she started the conditional use to make the judgment on why people would be putting the property up for sale. So good morning. My name is Tanya Ridpath, and I live at 1500 East 86th Street South. I'm here today to talk about a few rules and guidelines that we go by when we change the property conditions that are already zoned. Zoning uses and the character of the neighborhood. Greg Ferris wrote a letter to Dale Miller, and in this letter he states that the property is not being rezoned for residential and it will continue to be a residential structure. A residential structure is different than what the land is being used for. This is not correct. If the conditional use permit does go through, Andrea Hinshaw and her 2 children will have to move out of that home, and it is no longer now an owner-occupied residence. It's just a structure that looks like one. There's a big difference between that. A business facility that will operate 7 days, 24 hours a day, and it states this in her business plan as well as in the letter that he wrote, Greg Ferris wrote. He calls it a facility. To extent to this removal and restriction would detrimentally affect nearby property. Residential zoning law is no more than 7, so she has to do this to turn it into a business because our law states you can only have 7. 4 kids, her and her 2 kids is 7. 2 more use makes that out of code. Conformance and requested change to adapt recognized comprehensive plan. This is why Hayesville Planning Department voted this down, because it states in her business plan that it's a business. So this is incorrect when Mr. Ferris states in this letter that it's not going to be a facility. He does state it is going to be a facility. He calls it that. So how can this be a residential property? It's going to look like a residential structure. That's exactly what he says, but it's not going to be residential. It will not be an owner-occupied property. I understand that they're saying this is a need in our area, but just because this is a need in Sedgwick County doesn't mean that we're doing this in the correct area. This is a high-maintenance property. Spend that money elsewhere instead of maintaining a home and give these kids the best of what they deserve by being able to take that extra money and spend it on them and give them the extra energy and time that they need to become great citizens. Thank you for your time in this matter today.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. Next speaker is Monica Johnson. Approach the podium, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm Monica Johnson. I live at 1517 East 85th Street. I'm going to touch on some of the golden rules. Golden Rule 1, the zoning use and character of the neighborhood. This neighborhood is zoned rural residential. The applicant's group boarding home will change the rural residential home into a business. In the attempt to push through, Mr. Ferris, the Metropolitan Planning Committee are using a play on words. by saying the resident will essentially still be a residence or it will still be a residential structure. Don't kid yourselves. This is a business, pure and simple. Ms. Henschel herself has provided you with a business plan, and she has registered with the state of Kansas as an LLC business. This will most definitely be out of character with the rest of the single-family homes in our neighborhoods. We object to the allowing of this business in our neighborhood. You know, and we know that this is set as a precedent that can bring more zoning changes into the future and even more businesses into our neighborhood. Golden rule number 2, the suitability of the subject property for the use to which it has been restricted. The home is currently zoned rural residential. This home can continue to be used as a residence. However, your metropolitan planning area staff found that the group home for the foster care in this house was inappropriate use for this property. Granting the conditional use request changes this rural residential home into a 24-hour staffed for-profit facility, otherwise known as a business. Rule 5, a relative gain to public health, safety, welfare, and compared to the loss in the value of the hardship imposed upon the applicant. The value of the home is in the same as it was when it was purchased a year ago. The applicant can live in the home with 4 foster kids under the current zoning, or she could sell the home. The applicant would not have a loss of income in the application for the new business if it is denied. This is proposed business plan. It is not an existing business. You cannot lose something that you do not have. Number 9, recommendation of professional staff. The Metropolitan Area Planning staff recommended that this request be denied based on the golden rules. The Hayesville Planning Commission voted unanimously to deny this request. Additionally, Hayesville Mayor Bruce Armstrong wrote to you in his official capacity asking that the vote of Hayesville Metropolitan Area Planning Commission be upheld. We respectfully ask that you consider the recommendations of your own Metropolitan Area Planning staff, the Hayesville Planning Commission, the Hayesville Mayor, and the overwhelming majority of the people who live in this neighborhood and do not want the change from rural residence zoning of this into a neighborhood.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions. Next speaker is Andrea Henschel. Approach the podium. You have, state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you for having me. Andrea Henschel, and I'm the applicant. I should have brought my Kleenex. Okay. I've been contacted by neighbors through social media, Facebook Messenger. They've come to my house. They've written me letters. They've stopped me after the hearing. They're all in support of this this group residence. They have told me that they've been visited by a male in the last few months. They stated that this gentleman, they are considered scare tactics. He's going around scaring these people, the neighbors, into signing this petition. They were told the neighbors would run loose in the neighborhood, steal property, and be destructive to the neighbors' homes. I've also seen comments from neighbors on Facebook stating these same facts. After speaking to several neighbors, they've expressed their support to the group residents. These neighbors are not willing to come forward due to the extreme opposition of their neighbors. In fact, they've also felt pressured into signing the petition and came to me and let me know what's been going on. The majority of the foster children in custody are due to no fault of their own. They have experienced various trauma, including being removed from their parents due to neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, alcohol and drug abuse, death of a parent, and incarceration of a parent. In the last year and a half of taking children into my home for foster care placement, I've had little to no issue with any of these children. I live with these kids, and my children, ages 7 and 5, will live with these kids. The children I take into my home now are the same children I would take in with me in the group residence. There will be no difference in the level of behavior from the foster home now to the group residence. When contacted from the placement agency to take a new child, I am sent a referral stating previous behaviors of the child. The agency verifies that there are no other children in the home that would cause issue or concern for the child in question needing a placement. I can refuse any child from the placement agency for any reason. This is the same process for the group residents. The children that currently live in the home are involved in school activities, football games, homecoming, and drama. 2 of the children have just recently obtained jobs. That are located conveniently down the street from each other. One's taking driver's ed this coming Saturday. I'm sorry. This is very important to these children that they stay with me, that they love it at my house. They like being in this area. They love it out there. They like the cornfield. They like to sit out there on the front porch and just look, and it's peaceful. Sorry. One will begin driver's ed this coming Saturday, and because of the convenience of the location of the 2 businesses, we're going to be purchasing a car. The bosses are going to, they've agreed to on their work schedules. The children will be involved in learning the process of purchasing the car, registering it, insuring the vehicle, along with general maintenance. We're also setting up bank accounts. They're learning cooking, laundry. They're doing yard work. They love yard work. I had one girl, and she didn't know how to use the lawnmower, and she's excited out there using the lawnmower and weed eating. They're anticipating the holidays. They're ready to decorate, and we have a bond. These kids are comfortable with me. They're comfortable in confiding with me. We have one-on-one conversations. I'm just requesting that this be approved. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We have a couple questions. Commissioner Meitzner?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to request that we allow Andrea, since she's the applicant, to finish what she needed to say for maybe 2 more minutes. Is that what you need?
I just feel like, and I actually have letters from children that are in care and that have been into my house, and they, like I said, they just love it at my house. And I also have a worker here that has taken the kids out, and they're always so excited to come back to the house rather than go to anybody else's house. It's very important to them. They love the Derby schools. They get on the bus right in the front. The bus stops right at my driveway. They get on, they go to school. It's just, they enjoy being out there. They enjoy the home. They have their own room. Well, they share rooms, but they enjoy that. They have each other. So, I don't know.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz has a question.
Thank you. There were a couple of concerns mentioned about your ability to handle a generator or handle things that happen in emergent situations. Could you kind of explain,
Sure.
kind of how you would handle things that come up?
Well, I've lived it this last year. We did have water, and our lights, electricity went out. We got some water in the basement. The sump pumps went off. As soon as Home Depot opened, I went and got a trash pump. Got it home, hooked it up. All the water got out. It's gas, so I didn't need any electricity. As soon as the electricity came on, the pumps came on, sucked all the water out. I can handle it. We got a generator. We purchased a trash pump. So, I mean, I have lived this. I have. It's been hell, but I can handle it, and I have. So
The other concern was some code violation issues about the deck on the back or those kinds of things. Could you speak to that?
Yes. I've had numerous groundwater people, Thrasher, all kinds of different people come out, and they recommended removing the deck due to the sloping of the ground, the negative drainage toward the house. And when we removed the deck, there was it was really bad slopage towards the house. So we backfilled all of that in. The deck was in really bad repair. It was really bad. There was a lot of rotted wood on it, so it needed to come out anyway. I'm sorry, what was your other question?
No, I mean, I too have had water in my basement, and I just now, the other day, got it just now after how many months. So, you know, it was a learning experience for
Right.
me. I worked my butt off, and so,
and we do.
you know,
you do what you need to do. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You do what you need to do. And this is my house. This is my basement. This is where I live right now with these children, with these foster children. I'm not going to live in an unsafe house myself. I would never live in a home and bring my own children, let alone any foster children, into a home that has black mold, that's crumbling, that's not safe for anybody to live in. I would not do that. So this house is safe. Chris Labram has come out with some of his staff, and he can let everybody know what he's seen in the home. As far as the concerns with the stairway and no rails, I'm not sure what they're really talking about, because out the back door you just go straight out. There's no deck, there's no porch, there's nothing out there. So it's just a slab of concrete right out the back door. Out the front door, there's 2 small stairs. So not completely sure what they're talking about regarding that.
I don't have anything.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So back to the point you just made, is there a big drop-off? If you went out the back door right now that the deck is gone, is there a big drop-off to the ground right now?
No, you just walk straight out the door.
Is it, so it's like, it's almost the same level?
Yes,
No
it's
big.
the same level out the door. You just keep walking.
All right, very good. And I apologize for not knowing the answer to this question, because I feel like this is kind of a mature topic at this point, but you said you live there now, and you have, I think, up to 4 foster girls there now.
Yes.
Do your kids also live with you at this time?
Yes, they do.
So how many people are living under that roof at this time?
There's 7.
Up to 7?
Yes, I have 7.
And by law, that's okay, because if I understand, if anybody wants to talk about the legal side of this, but because the law, I think, if I understand it correctly, only allows up to 5 unrelated people, but since you and your family are related, that counts as 1, and then there's 4 other girls, which I assume that are not related to each other, so that's 5. That's allowed under county law currently. And so going to 6, however, would require a conditional use. And I would like maybe for legal folks to talk about this as well, but we're not changing the zoning. Or people keep saying we're changing the zoning. We're leaving this rural residential. What we're talking about is conditional use that would allow you to break through that requirement of no more than 5, because there would be up to 6 kids there. I'm not, may not be saying that correctly, but you and your 2 kids would move to the other home if this was approved, and you would have other folks supervising these kids 24/7. Is that correct? They would not be living there. The supervisors would not be living there. They're simply there to watch the 6 children in the home that were living in the 3 bedrooms. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I will be the main caretaker of these children. So there'll be limited staff that are hired in maybe weekends, some overnight positions, things like that. But I will be the person that is taking these children to their doctor's appointments, to anything that they have. I will be there for them.
I guess what I'm saying is, though, you don't need a bedroom in that case because you're not sleeping there,
No,
right?
no, sir, no.
So in that case, you're changing from a resident who would use the house like a regular house. Any foster parent, for example, would sleep in their home and just like any other family would. But in this case, if this was approved, then that person who's supervising the kids would not be living in the house, but they would be there to supervise the kids, probably using the restroom once in a while and things like that, but they don't need a bedroom, for example. They don't need changes of clothes, for example, for themselves.
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
And also, I did want to mention that I do have another home. The other home I had prior to this one, that is in an HOA and will not allow me to have a group home in that residence. I've also looked into that, so that is not an option.
I will ask someone later on to talk about the rezoning aspect of what we're being proposed with, because I think my understanding is this is going to remain rural residential and this conditional use is for this specific use only, and it doesn't allow anything else outside what's being discussed specifically today. The 6 children in a group home setting would be licensed and contracted by the state. So,
yes.
Okay. I have some other questions along that line later on, but thank you for your testimony today.
Okay. Thank you very much.
See any further questions? I appreciate it. Next speaker is Susan Oddie. Please approach the podium. You have 3 minutes. State your name for the record.
I am Susan Oddie, live in Derby, Kansas. We've now been through 4 hearings, this one being the 5th, and I think that everyone involved has learned a lot from this experience. We've learned this home isn't as bad as has been portrayed in the beginning, that a little maintenance has gone a long way, and that per the recommendations of the MABCD, any basement issues can be resolved in numerous ways and will be worked on in accordance to their request. This home will remain a home, not a business, but a home where these children can have consistency in their lives, a place that they can call their home, where they can have friends over, be involved in school activities, and at least be offered a path towards a promising adulthood. These youth are no different than the children currently living there or any other child their age, except for, whatever reason, they can no longer remain in their previous situations. They didn't choose this situation. They are not felons with records. Felons are handled by the Kansas Department of Corrections, not in homes like this one. These are kids that have been dealt a bad hand and are just looking to stay in the game. This is a very humbling experience for most of them, and the majority are grateful that somebody cares enough and is willing to just take them in. While false and misleading information about these kids being felons, the property being rezoned for a business, and the condition of the property not being fit for residency has stirred up unnecessary opposition towards these kids and Andrea, not everyone is opposed. Encouraging communications have been received from within the immediate neighborhood, other Hayesville residents, and surrounding areas in support of this home. The local communities in general support this home. Youth Horizons has overwhelming community support for its work with youth and their ability to incorporate the youth into society as competent adults. I am asking that you approve the conditional use and give it a chance. Give these youth a chance in this home and give Andrea a chance with these youth. I strongly believe that it's a win for the kids and a win for the community. If not, revoke the conditional use. But at the very least, this home deserves a chance to succeed, as do these children. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. The next speaker looks like Gay, and I can't read the last name. You live on South Victoria?
I apologize for writing. I thought about that after I wrote it. And I thought I better go up there and write it where you can read it.
State your name for the record. You'll have 3
Gary
minutes.
Chapman. I live at A326 South Victoria. And I appreciate what Andrea is doing with the foster kids. I think what she's doing is a fine thing. We are not here today to belittle her for what she's doing with the foster kids, but what we are doing is we are talking about a zoning issue and nothing more. But there seems to be a lot of confusion about whether this is a business or not. She has proposed a business plan, so I don't know why you'd propose a business plan if it wasn't a business. It's also an LLC, which you have before you, that this home is an LLC. It's a business. She registered with the state as a business. It's a facility. I don't know what a 24/7 staff facility. I don't know how you consider that anything other than a business. So I'm not sure. Last time we were here, Commissioner Cruz said she didn't understand how we could, what the problem was. You were talking like as if they were cars, like you had 4 cars in the driveway or 6 cars in the driveway. Well, the difference is because 4 cars is a residence, 6 cars, it becomes a car lot. It's no different with the 6 kids. It becomes something that requires the state, it requires a zoning change, and we can say it's not a zoning change, but we're here today because it is a zoning issue. Now, it may be conditional use, but we've already heard from before that conditional use is a type of zoning procedure. So we keep getting confused, and I think part of that confusion is on purpose, it seems like, to get this pushed through. We are not against the foster kids going in this home. As a matter of fact, I've given you something that talks about how group homes compared to foster homes, there's a big difference. The foster homes are successful. There's a lot of good things about it, where group homes have been very unsuccessful. As a matter of fact, the state of corrections says that group homes are less successful than positive. So let's don't take away that family atmosphere that these kids have. We're talking about sick, but we can keep 4 in a family atmosphere, and I think that's a good thing. I think what she's doing with these kids is a great thing. But if you put the 6 kids in there, you take away the family atmosphere, and then you make it a facility with staff. You got different people coming, and those kids don't feel the same family atmosphere that they have today. What she's doing is a good thing. She needs to continue to do that and help those 4 kids instead of taking those 4 kids and then putting them into a staff facility where you have different people coming in there. I don't know how long those people will work for. Sometimes they may work a little while, sometimes they may work a long while, but it's not going to be the same as a family atmosphere. I think this would nullify the golden rules and 1 to 3 that the MAPC put together, that this is a business, and I think that we should deny this request based on the zoning conditional use request. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. The next speaker, I don't see any questions, by the way. The next speaker is Terry Atwater. Please state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Terry Atwater, and I can pretty much assure you I come from a different perspective than anybody else in this room. I operate 7 of these homes, exactly what Andrew is talking about. I currently have 25 foster kids, 13 boys and 12 girls. And so first, let's address the elephant in the room, right? A lot of this is predicated around fear. I understand the zoning, and I get all that. But and also we talk about the lack of success in group homes, okay? I have 7 homes, again, with 25 kids. I had 11 kids this year that were on-time graduate eligible this year. We graduated 10. 90% of my kids have jobs. 90% of them have savings accounts. We just sent our first 2 young ladies to college. One of them was the youngest of 11 kids. She's the first to ever graduate from high school, and she's currently enrolled at Emporia State University. I'm telling you, to equate these kids to a business hurts my heart. I never saw myself being in this business, never. Never even imagined I'd be in this business. I wouldn't do anything else right now. To see a kid, now we talk about the family atmosphere, right? We talk about that element. Now, let me speak to that. Is it the best situation being in a group home? Absolutely not. But it'd be certainly, if we could keep every kid in home, in their normal home, their maternal home, I'd be the happiest greeter at Walmart you ever saw, because it put me out of business. And I'd be unbelievably happy. But the reality of it is right now there's 8,000 kids in the state of Kansas in the foster care system. 8,000 kids. And what I see a lot of times, and I ran into it myself, these same people that are saying that it's a horrible idea, we've got big brothers, big sisters, we've got Boys and Girls Club, we've got foster homes. We have those opportunities all the time. And I'm telling you, here's the thing, these kids deserve a chance. I've got one kid right now that is 18 years old and been in foster care since he was 6 months old. He slept in 81 different beds. 81. When he came into my house, I assured him that this is going to be the last bed you'll ever sleep in until you move out and sleep in your own bed. It makes what Andrew's talking about doing makes a difference. I understand the neighbors. I understand all that. Let me tell you something. I guarantee you, and some of you, if you drive around the Wichita area, have probably driven by some of my homes, and you would never know. There's no signage out front, our lawns are cut. Matter of fact, I'm running late now because I've got an exterminator today coming around all of my homes. And let me tell you something, if Andrew's not doing her job, and I know this from experience, if Andrew's not doing her job, the DCF will shut her down. You all won't have to come back in here and get you all to shut her down. They'll shut her down themselves. So again, I live this life every day. I'm behind Andrea. She and I have talked about it. I'd welcome anybody in this room to come out to my homes who wants to come see. You want to see these horrible kids? People ask me all the time, they say, Terry, do you have bad kids? And my answer is always, I do not have bad kids. I have good kids from bad situations that have learned how to adapt and address the situation. So, I lend my support to Andrea, and I would ask that you all please give her the opportunity to change lives. So,
Thank you. We have a question for Commissioner O'Donnell.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry. Good to see you. I've enjoyed actually touring one of your homes and meeting with you, and know everything you do with It Takes a Village. And I think we established a pretty good relationship between the county and Exploration Place and
Absolutely.
the zoo
Thank
with you guys, based on that tour. But your homes average 3 to 4 kids, right?
That is correct.
So it's
That is
not
correct.
a larger group home.
That is
so
correct.
you don't have more than 4 in any of your homes, correct?
4 is the max.
Right.
And the reason for that, we operate 3 and 4 bedroom homes, and so if we've got 4 bedrooms, we've got 4
Right. Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
However, I do know, I can tell you about 5 other people that do the exact same thing that I do, and because we meet often and talk about our issues, and some of them have up to 16 in their homes. Some of them have up to 16. And we also talked about the fact of different people coming in. Well, let me one thing about these kids, everybody's not going to connect with Andrea. Bringing in additional people to talk with, to mentor to these kids is a plus. I'm telling you, I live it.
Yeah, no, I know you live it, love
Yeah.
what you do, appreciate you.
And thank you for all that
appreciate
you've done for
everything,
us.
that It Takes a Village does. There is a numerical difference.
Absolutely, of 2.
What we're talking about.
Correct.
So, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that I've ever actually met you or not, but you sound like a very passionate person, and I love your commitment to helping these kids. Thank you for all you do for our community. I'm curious, are these homes that you're talking about that you operate, are they YRC2s, group homes?
No, great question. No, I actually have the older kids. They're what's called transitional living homes. And then we actually have the ability to go to the next step, which is community integration home. What that means is if our kids show themselves at our homes that are staffed 24 hours a day, I actually have 3 homes right now that kids in high school live at by themselves. Now, let me say I've got 7 homes and 51 cameras. So we do get a chance to monitor our homes. But yeah, we do not have YRC2s. The next step for our kids when they leave our house is into the community. And we want to prepare them for that.
So are these young people in your homes, are they less than age 18, most of them, or?
I have one 20-year-old. The age range that I can actually have in my home is 16 to 23.
I see. With respect to their behavior, have you had problems with these kids with criminal activities and 911 being called and juvenile offense convictions of these kids? Has anything like that happened that you can speak to?
So criminal activity, no. Have we had the police out the house? Sure. But probably no more than I had out to my house when I raised my 4 teenagers. So yes, we've had the police out for various things. Normally, when I talk about the police coming out, it's because somebody's ran, what we call runners. They've left the residence AWOL.
Well, I guess I would say it this way: between the youth that you house in these facilities, homes, between things they might do in those communities, if any, think about their impact on the communities that these kids are living in. Have the police have to get out there and get involved in situations because the kids vandalized a car or stole something from a neighbor, and that type of thing?
Great question. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We've had none of that at all. As a matter of fact, I had the police out to my house on Thursday of last week, but it was because some girls from the school jumped one of my girls coming off the school bus. Nothing to do with my kid, but yeah, we had the police out just last week.
Do you know if any of the kids that you house in your homes have any juvenile offender convictions?
We have had some, absolutely we have. And we've had some that have had to do community service hours, absolutely. But that being said, I'm still not going to throw them away.
Well, I guess my question would be, since Senate Bill 367 actually gets into this a little bit, the past couple years ago, and the state tries to keep children in need of care, in other words, sync children, children in need of care, separate from juvenile offender kids, and they don't want them to be housed together. And so even if they go to a foster home, they try to not house these types of children together, but specifically juvenile offender kids they try not to place them in group homes according to the law. And so they would target them primarily for foster homes, but not to intermingle juvenile offenders with children in need of care. And so this is actually a change for our state. We used to operate Judge Riddell Boys Ranch, which was a criminogenic home. We had up to 50 boys out there that had juvenile offender issues, and that's why we operated that home. And of course, it's been bulldozed by now. But the state's changed its plan, and they don't place juvenile offenders in group homes. That's the last option. They want to place them in foster homes or with family or whatever. So with respect to the kids that you're in your facilities that have juvenile offender histories, I don't know if you've ever had to, mingle a child with a criminal history with a child without a criminal history, or you try to keep them separate and that type of thing.
Great question. And a lot of that depends on what the charge is, right?
Right.
So we actually deal with some kids who have had some issues. We've had some kids that have stolen cars that are currently living in my house. We've had some kids who have assaulted their parents that are currently living in my house. Absolutely. Absolutely, we have those. But I still say that it's so easy. All their life, my kids tell me all the time, everybody gives up on me. Everybody gives up on me. So I talk to my team, my staff. I've currently got about 29 staff.
Wow.
And one of the things we talk about, we are not going to give up on them. Now, have we disrupted, meaning have we gotten rid of kids? Sure we have. Sure we have. In those situations that are extreme. But we're going to work with kids to the best of our ability each and every day. And again, like I said, we've got 13 boys and 12 girls. People often ask me why I took on girls, because it was going to kill my business. And I told them, quite frankly, because I needed to get my GPA up in my houses. So that's why we took on the girls. But they've done very well. They've done unbelievably well. And I'm telling you, the impact that you all are saying to the community, I live it. I've lived it since 2015. That does not happen. I'm telling you, it does not happen.
Again, I appreciate your passion for what you do, and also I thank you. It's nice to meet you today.
All right, and Commissioner O'Donnell, thank you very much for all you've done.
Yeah, well, and just one follow-up with
Okay.
you, Terry. So just to be clear, you do not operate YRC facilities, so it is different than Ms. Henschel's. Is that correct?
That is correct. There are some different rules and regulations going on.
So
Absolutely.
we're dealing with two different types of housing.
That is correct.
Yeah. So that's all I really need. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Greg Ferris. Approach the podium. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the County Commission, my name is Greg Ferris. I'm an agent for Ms. Henschel. I'm going to take a little different approach. That's a tough act to follow. Appreciate being here. Jim, I'm so sorry. Hear about your mom.
Thank you.
I think we need to get back to why we're here. We're here because we have a conditional use application, not a rezoning application. It goes through the planning process, but not through the zoning process. But the golden rules, the golden regulations, whatever you'd like to call them, are the same requirements for conditional use. They have the same stipulations, and so you do have to follow those. And that's really what's important, because you are not, this is not a policy decision where if 50 people come up in favor of a policy decision, you look at that and you go, oh, the majority are for or against. It's irrelevant. The Supreme Court of the state of Kansas has determined that neighborhood opposition cannot be a deciding factor in deciding a conditional use or zoning case. It cannot. It can be one factor, but it cannot be the factor. That's very important to understand, because a 95 or 99 or 100% protest petition is but one factor. The Planning Commission examined this very carefully. The maker of the motion was very specific in going through the golden regulations. And by the way, those golden regulations are in place because of the Constitution of the United States that allows Ms. Henschel to do with her property any way she wants, so long as it doesn't do certain things. And that's where the golden rules came from, was really a constitutional issue. So I think it was kind of interesting today when we was talking about the Constitution, because that's really what this is when you get into the golden rules. And I think one of the parts of the golden rules is staff opposition. And I visited at length with staff. Their opposition was based on the condition of that basement and the groundwater issues. Your staff from the MABCD has been out there at least twice. They're working directly with the applicant to make sure there are no issues. And my understanding in speaking with staff, and you can ask them if I'm correct in saying this, is that if those conditions are met, and they have to be or the conditional use goes away, so if those conditions are met, they have no longer have opposition, and you can ask them that question. The whole idea of business and residence, again, those are terms. They're terms in the zoning code. The zoning code classifies this as a residential use. With the conditional use, it's still a residential use. So when you look at and evaluate the golden rules, it's very simple. It is a residential use. Those are really the last things. I just ask you to confirm what your Planning Commission, through 2 lengthy hearings, overwhelmingly supported in their findings. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to get back to objective analysis here rather than anecdotal assumptions. And so I want to just know, you've been involved in this for a while. Up to this point, I could ask this question to Ms. Henschel as well. I forgot to do this, but has there actually been any actual scientific or maybe scientific's not the right word, but analysis, objective analysis that talks about property values or crime that are around these particular homes? I continue to ask that question because I can't seem to get an answer from anybody. We all assume that property values are going to be impacted and then crime is going to be an impact on neighbors. But what's the objective answer to that question? Is there anybody has any actual evidence of that? I'd like to know if you have any information.
Commissioner Howell, I really appreciate that because I ran out of time before I could get to my very last point, which was that the Planning Commission maker of the motion, specifically in his motion and in his findings, stated that there had been no evidence whatsoever produced by anyone that showed that there were any negative impacts as a result of this request. And that was part of if you go through, you'll find it in the record of the Planning Commission. There is no empirical evidence that has been shown that there's a negative impact. And in fact, if you look at the community, if you look at where the other group residences are, there has not been, because if that was true, it would be easy to go to find. The neighbors could have easily gone and found out where other group residences, gone back before they existed and shown now what the values of those homes were and how they declined. In the last 6 months, we've had a lot of rain, a lot of flooding. I think that's probably as much. I think Commissioner Cruz correctly cited that may be as much of a factor. But there are no empirical data, and no one has produced that empirical data. And based on that, you must reject any hypothesis that anybody makes, because again, you're a quasi-judicial board. You're really looking at facts and you're looking at information. And if no one presents to you empirical data that shows that the property values in that area will be impacted, you cannot conclude, based on the golden rules, that there's a negative impact to the property.
And I have one other question, and I'm not sure that you're necessarily the one I should ask the question to, but if not, I'll defer the question to someone else at a later point. But back to DCF, Department of Children and Families. There's been a lot of assumptions that we're going to potentially put these kids in an unsafe environment. I think one of the conditions is that MABCD would have to will inspect and make sure that the home is safe in their opinion. But DCF, I think, would do the same thing. Is there any risk to these kids that this is a placement that would harm them health and safety wise in terms of the structure or the home?
Again, Commissioner Howell, good question. The requirements of the conditional use, there are several. One of them is that the MABCD has to sign off on any remediation issues they'll evaluate. So the governing area of your county, the MABCD, will evaluate and make a recommendation on how this has to be remediated, or she will make a recommendation to them on how she's going to remediate it, and they must approve that, or that's one of the conditions of the conditional use, so you can't get around that. Another recommendation of the conditional use is that she must comply with all state and federal regulations and permits and licenses. So that gets to your question of whether DCF would allow anybody in an unsafe environment. Having had foster children myself, I can tell you absolutely they will not allow them in an unsafe situation. They will come and tell you if you have to correct any little detail, much less a major detail. So she will, any of the issues of code violations, these things, you have an MABCD that will evaluate that. You have a DCF. Her house will be safer than probably any house in that area because of the requirements and regulations she'll have to go through.
Thank you for your answers.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz?
Just while we're on this topic of studies, it's page 144. So when this came up before, I had asked staff to find a study relating to group homes. And, you know, this study, while kind of inconclusive, really, so I'll just read a little bit. It says, in the case of this example, 11 group homes, the value of the homes in the immediate area increased on average of 3.41% over a 5-year period, while the value of homes in a broader neighborhood increased by only an average of 2.92. Really, the problem is like Mr. Atwater, what was it? Terry Atwater, like he mentioned, you really don't know where these homes are. So it's hard for people to study them because you just don't know where they are. They're kind of designed to fit into neighborhoods. And so that was one thing that I thought was really interesting about this study was, I mean, one, it kind of shows you that maybe they aren't as bad as people are making them out to be if you can't really pinpoint where they are. And two, there's really no evidence whether property or crime rates, property values decrease and crime rate increases. So to say that, I think, to say that there's something out there that states to that isn't an accurate statement because there really are no studies that say either way. So I just kind of wanted to point that out because there's a lot of evidence here. And you know, when we're making decisions like that, I think it's important to understand that people are saying things, but that doesn't make them true.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Cruz. I think that's exactly accurate, especially when you're dealing with any kind of planning issue. You do hear these comments of how people feel, and I understand that. I understand people have the right to have feelings, and that's why one of the golden rules is neighborhood support or opposition. But that's also why the Supreme Court ruled that you can't use that exclusively because feelings are not the only relevant topic and that you have to get to the facts. And the facts are that in our community there are numerous group residences that have more than 6 kids that have all of these other things and that nobody knows they exist and they see no correlation in any negative impact.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Brianna Baskinville, please state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Brianna Baskerville. Today's been really interesting. I've learned quite a bit just being here. Jem, sincere just for your mother. And Lacey, it's been interesting to meet you, and I appreciate what you said about women being in some of these positions, and I will definitely be calling you later, and you may be seeing my resume before long. A couple of things. I met Andrea Henschel 5 years ago. Her son was diagnosed with leukemia at the age of 2. And so I've gotten to know her family through her son, who has fought for his life. And she is an amazing mom. We call them mama bears, and she definitely is a mama bear when it comes to leukemia. Her 2 sons, Nathan and Austin, I've gotten to know. I was on the Leukemia and Lymphoma Board for Man and Woman of the Year. I'm one of their mentors and have spent years with them. Her son at age 18 raised $25,000 for leukemia and lymphoma. He was still in high school. And his little brother, Austin, is not far behind him. And it has been nothing but a joy to know her family and her boys. And if my 2 boys end up anything like those 2, Nathan and Austin, her oldest, then I will consider myself a success as a parent. I am the founder and the director of Wichita's Littlest Heroes. We are a 501c3 that supports sick kids here in Wichita. We support over 500 families, including the Henschel family. Andrea is the single mom of 4, 3 being boys. She is a warm, bright, smart, and a value to this community. Our community needs strong women leaders making an impact for our city and the impressionable kids within it. That is exactly who Andrea Henschel is, and I am proud to call her a Wichita's Littlest Heroes mom and a friend. An organization of 500 families and myself as an individual will completely 100% back Andrea Henschel up, as well as her foster children. Just a moment. As a woman, I 100% believe that she is 100% capable of running a home. Many women run homes and generators and things like that. These are easy things to overcome. Cancer, on the other hand, is not so easy to overcome. My family runs a general contracting company. We have for over 100 years. I have much experience in general contracting and construction. We have several general contractors, several architects that will 100% back Mrs. Henschel up. If you want to talk about houses within communities that serve, we could talk about Ronald McDonald House, his Helping Hands. Those things are all programs within our community to help support women and organizations that support foster kids like that. I ask that you approve this issue on those facts. I do have a letter here from one of her kids, if I have time to read it. If not, I'll be happy to stop. All right, thank you.
To the clerk, if you like. Next speaker is J.R. Boria. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm J.R. Boria, 1301 East 84th Street South. Mr. Howell, my condolences to your mother. We knew Sally for over 40 years and really enjoy her. So I'm very sorry, and we'll have you in the prayers and the rest of the family. Okay. Well, he said just about everything I was going to say about the business. Here, Jay, what I suggest the last time is why go through all this hassle for 2 more kids? The reason is 4 kids is $265,000 a year. 2 more kids will add another $160,000 a year. That's over $300, $400, almost $400,000. And that's very lucrative and that's very good. She could avoid all this mess if she just keeps her 4 kids and everybody will be happy. We just would like the zoning change. That's the main thing, is the zoning. She could keep her 4 kids, everybody happy. Everybody happy. Now, the other day, Ms. Cruz says this is all based on emotions. Well, I saw you pretty emotional a little while ago when you were talking about the commission and the girls and more women involved and so on and so on. This is not emotional. This is not really emotional in this case. It's more of let's keep the neighborhood like we wanted, residential. We have been losing neighbors that actually is family. They've been with us for about 30 years, 15 years, 17 years. Now they're moving out. Water issue, some of it. This issue is the main thing. It's hitting everybody pretty hard. The group homes, they work much better in city limits. The man that came over here and said he has 7 of them, all of them are in the city limits, and there's 4 kids per house. Keep them happy. Nobody bothers, nobody get bothered, nobody protests. Keep them happy. 4 kids, everybody happy. Thank you for your time.
Commissioner Howell?
Thank
you.
Moment, sir. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
First of all, JR, I just want to say thank you for your kind words. And this is a bit of a rabbit trail, but my mom loved you and Connie greatly.
Yeah.
And I know you visited her over the years, even in the nursing home the last few
It's
years.
sad.
So
It's
thank
sad.
you.
She was a special lady for us too.
I know
We
that
really, really enjoyed her.
She thinks that you are some great friends, and I think because of that, I also have consider you and Connie to be my friend as well. So thank you. You've actually appeared before us numerous times on the water issue at the Derby meeting and these meetings.
Yeah, we have it. The problem in there that she said that that mentioned to her about the landscaping that she had to push the water away from the house and so on and so on. And it's true. We have to do that. At least 36 inches from the house, graded in a 30 degree, and to keep the water from the walls. But the problem in our case is not that. It's the aqueduct. And you know that because you went into Derby and then vouched for us to help us.
Right.
Our problem is that the water it's an underground river, and it comes from the ground up into the basement. She cannot handle it. She went to Lowe's to get a pump and put the pump, waited for the electricity to come on and plugged the pump and the water went out. Yeah, I mean, anybody could do that. But this is not handling the problem. This is just putting a Band-Aid in this little problem. So, but I don't want to talk about the water because, you know, everybody has the same issue over here about the water in the basement. Right now, we're having somebody to put a French drain in my basement. That's $23,000 just to cut the floor and put the French drains in there.
I got a quote for 12. Maybe you need to get another quote.
I'm sorry, what?
I said I got a quote for $12,000 to put a French drain in mine. Maybe you should get another quote.
Good, send me give me that name, because 23 to 12, that's a lot.
I am curious, is that going to fix your problem, you think?
Well,
why are we talking about that? Because the reason it's relevant is because I think Andrea has options to fix her
we
base.
really don't know. He doesn't even know.
We're off topic.
He's going to guarantee it, but, you know, we really don't know. It all depends on the water and the rain and everything else.
Right now, we have a zoning issue.
Thank you very
that we're
much.
trying to work. Thank you very much, Ms. Bory. I appreciate it. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak on the public agenda today. If there's anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this subject that did not speak, you may approach the podium, state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Mike Seiss. I live at 1940 South Woodlawn. I've worked with Andrea on the weekends primarily. I work, one of my part-time jobs is working with St. Francis Ministries as a respite care for foster kids. And speaking to the point of Andrea and her children and what she does, as a respite on-call worker, it is a joy to get that assignment to go pick up her kids. I know that the kids are going to be well behaved, that everything's maintained, that these kids are extremely well taken care of and cared for. That's not always the case with some of the other places that I pick kids up from, but I know with her, that's always going to be the case. Always a positive experience. The kids, like she said, from my personal experience, the kids always are well behaved and always are happy to go to her home. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, sir. I don't see any questions. Is anyone else in the audience that did not have an opportunity to sign up to speak at this time? We have one over here first. Please state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
My name's Jeff Collins. I'm at 1407 East 82nd. I've been listening to this. We've been in and out of these meetings several times. There's a lot of passionate debate on both sides. I hear a lot of topics and a lot of things being discussed. And, you know, some of the things that I'm hearing that disturb me the most are it seems like they're trying to make the neighbors in the area out to be some kind of vigilante group. There's nobody that I've heard that has anything just badly to say about group homes or Andrea or what she's doing there. I think she's doing a great job, and it sounds like everybody that supports her says she's doing a great job. But for me, we're still talking about the land issue and what it's going to do to this neighborhood. And I don't think we can deny the fact that changing this, even on a temporary order, is just the beginning of the end. It will bring more and more and end the residential and character of this neighborhood, which I'm not ready to give up on. I just think we just need to let this sit where it's at for right now. She's got a great dynamic with the kids. She's there all the time, living in the house from what I'm hearing. If I'm hearing it correctly, she's staying in the house. And if you add there, she's got to add staff, which is going to change the nature of the relationship she has and the relationship the kids have with her because of her absence, because she'll be moving out into her other home. I think it's bad for them. I think it's bad for us. I think I'd hope you'd see that and just keep it as it is with the 4 kids and maybe see how this goes for a little while and move in and maybe look at it again in the future. I also understand there's a new letter from Mayor Bruce Armstrong that states how he might have applied the golden rules to our situation. There's been a lot of statements made about the only side we have is the opposition of the neighborhood. I don't believe that to be true. A lot of people here are stating things that, can't be proven 100% factually. We keep going back and forth on that, on what's facts and what's not, and what's opinions. And I think even all of you have opinions and have your minds made up about which way this is going to go. But if there's a letter out there from Bruce Howell, a new one, that states how he applied the golden rules to deny this, I'd appreciate hearing that if you have it.
Thanks, sir. I don't see any questions. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this subject? Sir, approach the podium, state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Dylan Still. I am from Derby, Kansas. I have been in a group home. I was down at Kellogg Price. I know it's a different scenario, and it's a much larger area. They have, I think they have 4 homes now. I got lucky. I was able to go home with them. Other kids, not so much. And it really does make a difference. Because even though it's you guys saying they're staff, they're not just staff. They're family to these kids. They really are. That is all I had to say.
Thanks, sir. We appreciate it. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you for your bravery.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this subject? Ma'am, approach the podium, state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Still, and I am the grandparent of that remarkable young man right there. Andrea is my personal worker. I'm a kinship placement for my 2 grandchildren. And Andrea is a remarkable woman. I'm a little nervous. And she works her rear end off for us. She in group homes are needed, and I guess that's all I can say.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this subject? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Do we have any comments or a motion from the board? Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a number of questions I'd like to ask some clarifications, probably from Director Miller and or Chris Labrum regarding the home. Thank you for being willing to speak, to stand up and answer questions. First thing was, have you guys got out there and looked at this home? Is this back deck an issue for us is this issue a concern that we need to be concerned about? And I'd ask the same question about the septic system, because that was also raised today, or maybe it was raised in a letter I received. But
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. For the record, Chris Labrum, Metro Area Building and Construction Department. So as was stated, Mr. Wagner on our staff, he's our land use chief, evaluated that, and as was stated, the septic is in fine shape. So there would be no requirement to change that. Again, it doesn't. This wouldn't change the total number versus those who are in the house at this point. You'd be under the normal inspection system. And if that was to fail, then they would be required to, or to show any indication of being, of exceeding capacity, then they would be required to correct that at the time.
what about the back deck, the safety of the egress from the back side of the
So
house?
we were actually included in those who recommended that the applicant remove that deck. It was constructed improperly. It was not installed well. It was causing water intrusion into the siding of the home, and actually putting water into the basement in some areas. So that being removed, as well as several of the other things the applicants removed from the outside of the house, has helped a great deal with the drainage.
All right, thank you for that. Recommendations of MAPC was that they would require that you or your staff would make sure this house is safe before she would be able to, in fact, place more than the 4 children there at this house. Is that something that your staff is capable of, and any concerns about that whatsoever?
Yes, and we are capable of that, yes, Commissioner. I would say that it's not a factor in your decision. As commissioners for the home, I'm happy to give a full analysis if the commission would like that on what we did. We've been out there as staff, and we've also been out there with a basement repair contractor to evaluate the home.
Very good. I think my next question is probably for Director Miller, actually. Someone contacted me yesterday, and they said that there was, in their opinion, inadequate notice given for today's hearing. Can you please describe when the notices went out to people so they knew to come to today's hearing?
Well, there is no requirement for a notice for today's hearing. The only public hearing is Planning Commission. We send out courtesy notices following the action of the second hearing at the Planning Commission, indicating the date at which we anticipated this case would be before you, but there is no legal requirement for notice for today's meeting.
Was there notice sent out, however? I mean,
yes. If they signed up at the Planning Commission, the policy is that we send out notices to those that signed up at the Planning Commission.
Was Mr. Ferris correct in his description? This is a conditional use that follows the golden factors, but this is not a rezoning case, and this is a very limited exception to what's allowed in rural residential, specifically for this use only, and nothing else would be allowed other than allowing these 6 children to live there in a group home if this was approved, and that she can't add like a 7th or do something else without having to go back through the whole process again.
That is accurate, yes. It is a technical distinction, but the zoning, if you looked on the zoning map, if this were to be approved, it will still show up as RR rural residential, but it will also have the connotation of the conditional use number for today. And so the zoning remains the same, but the conditional use, if it is approved, would allow for the use only as permitted by whatever action here. And if you follow the Planning Commission action, it would be limited to those 6 youth. And based on the site plan, they could not build new structures. They couldn't have a 7th child. So yes, Mr. Ferris accurately characterized the action.
Okay. This may be a silly question, but I assume that there's businesses in rural residential zoning elsewhere in the county. That's not really something that's not unheard of here. We do that type of thing frequently, I assume.
Exactly. As you know, we did the agritourism thing a couple of years ago that allows lots of different businesses, but technically in a zoning code stand, this is not a business because it is listed under the residential section. If you review the Unified Zoning Code, all of the listed uses are listed by category. There's residential, there's civic, there's office, there's commercial, there's industrial, and a group residence is in the residential section.
Well, thank you for your answers. I'll probably have some comments later, but I'd like to hear the comments of my colleagues before I do anything else. So thank you. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to do 2 things. I would like to make a motion, but before I do that, I'd like to read a letter from Mayor Armstrong from the city of Hayesville. We all should have received this letter. They said they did, but just for the record, last time a commissioner said that Mr. Armstrong was not acting in the capacity as mayor, and he was, and this time he made it explicitly clear. This is Mayor of the city of Hayesville, Bruce Armstrong. And he says, Commissioner O'Donnell, I'm writing today on a conditional use permit for 8361 South Hydraulic. In review of the present recommendation of the MAPC, I take exception to their answers to the golden rules, of which there are 9. If you compare the MAPC's answers to those of the professional staff at MAPD, you will find they do not meet the standards set forth by Golden. MAPD voted to deny the application. That would have been staff. Why was the word essentially used? The use is not residential but a business. The business plan is being presented. The proposed residence would change the character of the neighborhood. This property may now be used, but previously was vacant because of the groundwater problem. This is not in conformance with Hayesville Comprehensive Plan because this will be a business. If the proposal is not approved, there will be no harm to the applicant. They are getting no income at this time. I think he's saying that on his own without, not sure if that is correct, but that is what he says. The adjoining residents would suffer loss of value as presented in the public comments. Opposition or support of neighborhood residents is not the only factor, but 91% do not want the change. Professional staff recommended denial of the application. Staff recommendation was not followed by the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. Finally, I would ask if the proposal had been turned down by the Planning Commission in your area of influence, denied by the MAPD, and opposed by 91% of the affected area, how would you vote? Very truly yours, City of Hayesville, Bruce Armstrong, Mayor. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would go with option number 2 provided to us by Mr. Justin Wagner, which is to deny the conditional use. I'd like to read some of the proposed findings into the record to accompany my motion that would focus on the golden factors and other relevant considerations. The first would be zoning, uses, and character of the neighborhood. All of the property adjoining this parcel is rural residential, and none of these properties have a conditional use in place for a group residence. The group residence use would be new and contrary to the existing single-family and agriculture uses. The character of the neighborhood would be changed with a profit-generating business. The next one, extent to which the removal of the restrictions would detrimentally affect nearby property. Evidence and statements have been presented that show a group residence is likely to negatively impact property values and increase crime. Moving on, the conformance of the requested change to the comprehensive plan or other plans or policies being utilized by the county. Hayesville's own planning commission considered this conditional use and unanimously recommended denial. Hayesville's planning commission unanimously recommended denial. I repeated that just because it was a unanimous decision. We just heard from the mayor of Hayesville. I think if any of you represented small town where their planning commission voted unanimously and their mayor personally reached out to you in opposition to it, I think you would take that into consideration very heavily as we are, as we represent those cities as well. That there's been questions on the proposed development using community facilities. Additional resources from the sheriff's offices or other first responders may be needed. Now we can talk about the opposition of the neighborhood residents. There's a 91% protest of more than 70 neighborhood properties. That's 4.5 times the 20% necessary threshold by state statute. More than 4.5 times. It's a dramatic amount of community engagement on this issue. Finding 91% of a community to agree on anything is virtually impossible. Also, the consideration of planning staff. The MABD staff did recommend denial. I know there's been some talk about changes to it, but let's take into consideration what staff said. We've heard from the neighbors that this has been obviously a somewhat emotional, but obviously a very passionate issue on both sides. I commend what Ms. Henschel's doing. I think that's incredible. I think what Mr. Atwater was doing, I visited his facilities. We do need to take care of these children in our communities. Nobody's saying that. There's been some aspersions cast on some of the neighbors, acting like they don't care about these. These neighbors have big hearts, care about these kids. That is not the issue. What we are talking about today is a conditional use permit. That's why I'm trying to focus on that. I could go on for an hour talking about the flooding issues, talking about other problems that this neighborhood's been plagued with literally for decades. But because that has zero to do with what we are here today, we can come back and talk about flooding at a later time. But today, we're talking about a conditional use permit. Today, I'm recommending denial of it based on multiple golden factors and the fact that the neighborhood and the city have both recommended denial. That there is no other option, in my opinion, for the county commission to take other than denying this application. So with that, that is my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have a motion. I will second the motion. Commissioner Cruz.
So the tricky thing about this is, you know, as a commissioner, I get this big book of all of the documents. And, you know, there's option 1 is to approve, and it lists all of the golden factors in why we should approve it. So I could read those as well. But I think we all understand that it's just a difference of opinion. I mean, really, that's what it boils down to. I want to make some points, though, real fast. We talked about a family setting, and Your definition of a family setting and my definition of a family setting might be two completely different definitions. I'm a single mom of 2 daughters. I don't fit the traditional mold. Sometimes people live with other folks and that's their family, and it doesn't fit a mom and a dad and 2 kids and a dog. It doesn't fit that traditional setting. So to say that this couldn't be a family setting, I don't believe to be true, because I believe that a family setting is what you make of it. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, you know, children in our society. You can have a family that has 6 kids that are biological to the parents, and they assault their parents, they steal from others, they are bad kids, and they don't live in a group home. They live right next door to you. So to say that these kids, you know, could be doing that, I guess, yeah, is absolutely true, but there's kids probably in your neighborhood who are already causing a ruckus that you just don't know about. So I think there are troubled kids everywhere, and to say that they're going to be specifically to this house, I think is also inaccurate. I just kind of want to address, you know, the fact that she might not know what to do with her home. I kind of take offense to that, because you can learn a skill and you can learn how to do things. And so I think that, you know, there is an opportunity for her to fix her house, do things that need to be done in order to help these children. So, you know, I'm not in support of Mr. Commissioner O'Donnell's motion today, because I believe that we do have a lot of kids in our community who need help. And where would they go? Where do they go if we don't put them here? That's my question. So I do believe that we have an opportunity to do what's right, and I'm doing what's right for myself and what I feel like is right, given all of the information today, given all of the information in this book. So whether you agree with me or you don't, that's where I sit, and that's what I'll be doing today.
Okay. Commissioner Meitzner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions. Dale, maybe you can help me on this. Familiar with a few years of the planning and zoning regs from the previous life across the city. So if this was denied, what are the rules, time frame about reapplying? Or is there one?
Well, the zoning code does have rules about the same application. You cannot refile within a year.
A year?
After 6 months, you could refile a modified request by going to the Planning Commission and asking them and explaining to them what the difference is. And if they say it's okay, then they can refile after 6 months. But you cannot refile the same case within a year.
Okay. Well, that's helpful. Yeah, I'm a little confused. There's been a lot of talk about, is it a residence or is it a business? Did you, in your opening comments, did you say it'd be like nothing more than just a home, like a resident home?
Well, what I was expressing was the applicant's opinion about the land use impact of the use. The code, as I explained, if you go to the zoning code, all of the uses that are listed in the zoning code are listed under those different categories: residential, office, civic, industrial, commercial. Group residence is listed in the residential section. So from staff's perspective, this is a residential use. Where the money comes from is irrelevant because it's in the category of residential.
Okay, that's helpful. But do I understand that this will have 24-hour supervision?
That is not a zoning code requirement. I believe that's a state requirement that the applicant could, but they've stated that over and over that they have to have 24-hour supervision and that's why they don't need the extra bedroom or bed, is that the 7th person will be up all the time.
Right, and that person is a
Yeah.
that person is a contracted, hired person?
It's what,
Or
that's my understanding from her description.
Okay. Well, I'm a little conflicted in residents versus a hired person to help supervise. I guess you can have 24-hour babysitters or something like that. Okay, so, and then related to the business comment versus residents, I do see in our other packet, aside from that, on the last page, Ms. Henschel had solicited a civil engineer. She says it's rezoning for a business, and repeats again later, it's to rezone for a business. I'm wondering if maybe the Ms. Hensel and I appreciate Mr. Ferris helping, getting involved and helping navigate this kind of a complex issue and a complex item to get through. I'm just wondering aloud if reapplying, if Ms. Hensel has a chance to use the right words as she's trying to do this, business versus residents, all these things, and maybe mend some fences with the neighbors about with the property and whatever else. But anyway, that's just thoughts for out loud. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz?
Just one more thing I forgot to mention. You know, we talk about 4 kids versus 6 kids, and I said this initially. You know, we're talking about lives here. We're not talking about cars in your driveway. So that, to me, is, you know, if you want to call me emotional, call me what you want. But we're talking about lives here. And so 4 versus 6, that, to me, is a point that I'd really like to make. Yes, language is important. I do see that we have picked apart a lot of social media posts. I wonder if there were other social media posts that we could have added in here from Hayesville happenings or other neighborhood of things, you know. I don't really see any of those in here. Would that have been helpful to have? I mean,
I saw some support in there.
You know, I just wonder, like, you know, where the... I mean, that to me, I think, is an important thing to point out. So,
Commissioner Cruz, there's letters of support in here as well, and stuff.
yeah, the social media post, I think, was a little.
Well,
if we want to talk about.
I was just previewing through the information.
Yeah, there's a lot here for sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might just make the point here that based on the motion and the second, it seems to me there's probably 2 votes at least to do what was motioned today. It does require 4 votes to agree with the recommendations of our Planning Commission today. So I can count. I can see how this is probably going to fall down. But I just want to make some points before we vote that I think are relevant. And again, I appreciate the very long process, been very thorough, a lot of great people involved, and I know everybody wants the best for these kids. We keep saying that. I'll just make a few points here. One thing I'd say is that Hayesville is, by the way a bird flies, is over a mile away from this home. And if you travel on the roads, it's at least 3.8 miles to the city limits of Hayesville. So I appreciate Hayesville's input, but I did watch their Planning Commission meeting, and in my opinion, they did not really articulate very much rationale for their unanimous denial of the request, or I should say the recommendation to deny. The most compelling thing that they talked about was the opposition of the residents in the 1,000-foot radius. And by the way, I might just point out, if this was inside the city of Wichita, we don't even do 1,000 feet. I think it's much smaller radius, but this is 1,000 feet because it's in the county. So it does incorporate quite a lot more homes. And anyway, with respect to what Commissioner Cruz just said, I was sitting at home one evening, as many of us will do, and I was looking at social media a little bit, and I happened to go over to Hayesville Happenings to see what was being said over there, just to see if I could see anything of interest, because I'm a member of that group as well. And one post really bothered me. I'll just have a read. I'll read here. I'll submit this to the record if you would allow me that privilege. But it says, I won't give the name here, but it says, I had an older guy come to my door wanting me to sign the petition. I refused. Besides the fear-mongering tactics he used to attempt to get me to sign, he stated that he'd been paid, that there would be paid babysitters, quote unquote, in a foster home. He asked me inappropriate questions about a husband and made a comment that he was surprised I didn't have one, and insinuated that my kids, especially my daughter, would be in danger living down the road and riding a school bus with the foster kids. I told him my kids drive to school. I have no problem giving any foster kid a chance to, at some form and of continuity, a chance of forming a family group, however non-traditional it may be. However, if the flooding is an issue, I think that needs to be resolved, especially if there's black mold before anyone is occupying that home or basement. So I read that without any changes. That's exactly what it says. And I think we've addressed the condition of the home. I don't think that's a concern. But I am concerned about the information that people had when they signed the petition. You know, I know sometimes people will sign petitions and may not really understand the depth of what is being asked of them. And so, although there's 91%, and I appreciate that very much, I think if everybody that signed that petition understood everything we all understand today, I don't know if there would be 91%. I just don't know. But I have some doubt that everybody who signed that petition would agree with that petition if they had understood the depths of all the things that we've talked about in our hearings lately. I would make the point that these they have up to 4 foster children there now. They're already in their community. They already interact with your kids. They're already there. We're changing this from people who are family members of Andrea. Again, potentially this was to pass. Change them from family members of Andrea to 2 more foster kids. But actually, it sounds to me like the number of people in the home actually might go down. One more thing that I think is extremely interesting for those of you that are concerned about crime rates. It seems to me that she could actually have juvenile offenders placed in the foster home. And in fact, that's generally what happens to them. Either they're placed with in a family setting of some relative that they might have, but many times they're placed in foster homes. So she could have kids placed there right now that have juvenile offenses, convictions. But according to state law, and I could read you the statutes if you want me to do that, but according to state law, they don't want to see juvenile offenders placed inside group homes. And so that means a juvenile offense, a conviction of a juvenile offender, would probably disqualify them for placement in a group home. And I think that, to me, that's interesting. So if you want to have a safe community, actually, this might be a good thing. The main difference between a business we're talking about here and what's happening today, as a designation of whether this is a group home, which is a YRC2, is paid at, the state changed the rate a little bit. It's $127 and change per day per resident. That's the going rate today on a YRC2. We as a county, we shut down Judge Rideau Boys Ranch because we couldn't make it work with that price. It wasn't enough money. We were having to subsidize JRBR at least $1 million more or more per year from the county property tax funds, which is why there was efforts to close that down to avoid that cost. The county could not make it work at that reimbursement rate. As a foster home, the foster parents of that home would get some money to cover the food and clothing and gas, transportation, and other things that child might need. There usually are, you have state insurance available to those kids, but the foster parent's got to take them all around, and so there's cost to the foster parent. That's why they give them, I would call it more of a stipend. You're not going to get rich doing this. You're doing it because you care about these kids. I don't know of any foster parent that gets rich at the rates that the state reimburses these parents. That's not the motivation. So what about YRC2? Well, if it was a YRC2, Andrea can't live there. By law, they're not designed to be a residential area for the staff. The staff's got to be paid, and I'm sure she's like everybody else. She's got to sleep somewhere sometimes. So you have to hire someone to be there awake to watch these children in times that they are sleeping. If the kids are sleeping, someone has to be awake and monitor what's going on. So in some ways, a YRC2 is actually safer and more secure and better for these kids than a foster home would be. Because in a foster home, I guarantee you the parents are going to go to sleep. The kids in a foster home might sneak out. Parents are asleep and they don't know what's going on. They find out what's going on after the fact because the parents are asleep and there's things that might happen in that home. Whereas a YRC2, you've got staff that's awake intentionally to monitor and see what happens with these children. So I think in terms of what's best for these kids, there actually are some advantages of YRC2 over a foster home. In fact, I would say, I love the testimony of that young man that visited today. He said that the staff is actually like family. I think that's a great testimony of that. I'll tell you also that YRC2 is more highly regulated by the state of Kansas than a foster home would be. So in terms of what's best for these kids, a YRC2 actually is not a negative thing, but actually could be a positive thing. By the way, to the extent we would like to see all these kids placed in better settings, foster home, or better yet with family, I would love that. I think that Mr. Atwater made the same point, and I think we all agree that it would be great if we didn't have this topic at all. But the reality is this is a socio issue of our culture. We have kids that are removed from homes for all kinds of reasons. And I wish we could solve it at the root level and not see kids removed from homes. I have no doubt that the people who pass these laws and are in charge of these things are doing the very best they can for these children. At the end of the day, it would be better for them to be placed with family or in a foster home. The reality is there's not enough foster homes to take the kids. So the state has done what they had to do to create beds for these kids to live in or to stay at. And that's exactly what a YRC2 is. It provides just enough money to manage a home and all the expenses of paying staff and paying utilities and paying food and paying for cleaning supplies and taking care of the landscaping and take care of the maintenance of the home. That's what the rate is intended to cover. It's not intended, again, for someone to get rich. But because you're going from a resident to a supervising role, it does require a different rate. And so this is not a business for someone to get wealthy. This is a business that pays a rate that's, in my opinion, would be very hard for someone to get rich on. But it's something that I think is maybe just enough money for someone to create those bed spaces for these kids that need a place to go. As you said, this is about land use. It's not about DCF or foster care. Unfortunately, that's part of the decision today. I completely agree that I think Director Miller made a point that this is still a residence. The nature of the business, if you want to call it that, is a residence for these children. I could go on. There's a lot of things we could continue to talk about. I could talk another hour, like one of my colleagues said. I could talk another hour on this. The reality is, the only golden factor that really matters, the one that matters the most to me, is the one that's not stated, and that's Matthew 17:12. With that, I'll stop my speaking. I'm going to vote no today on the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you. Just one statement on the 91%. I haven't heard anybody say that they felt like they were manipulated or coerced into signing that. I heard from neighbors that said people were begging for the petition, begging to be able to sign it. I spoke to a man that anybody in that neighborhood would know. His name was Steve Root. He actually developed the area. He owns 3 lots there. He didn't get to sign it before the deadline, but he owned 3 more. So if you figure out of 70 homes, another 3, that would have put the percentage to probably 95, 96%. So he also encouraged, but I said, Steve, it's too late, but I appreciate you calling me. But so there's 3 more lots that could have been part of that. But even if half of the people were coerced into signing it or given false information, that would still be more than twice the number that was needed for the appropriate state statute opposition of 20%. So even if you take 50% off, we're still more than double where we need to be. So I just want to make sure we're staying on focus and not try to put any type of alarmist rhetoric out there that people are being manipulated. Nobody was manipulated to sign that. So with that, Mr. Chairman, my motion stands.
Thank you. I don't see any other comments. I just have a quick couple comments. First of all, I want to tell everyone how much I appreciate that you did listen to what I said at the beginning of the meeting. We conducted a very professional meeting. We made sure that each and every person that wanted to be heard was able to be heard. At times we got off track a little bit and talked about things that are more emotional rather than land use issues, but that's okay because I know that there's some emotional issues that are involved in what we were discussing today. I sincerely appreciate the time and effort that every single citizen that's been involved in this has provided to this process, because going over to the MAPC 2 times, coming over here 2 times is a tremendous burden on our citizens, and I appreciate the fact that you stayed engaged in this through the entire process. So, again, just thank you very much. We ran a professional meeting today, and I appreciate that. Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
No.
Commissioner Howell?
No.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Thank you all. Why don't we take a break until noon? For those of you that are watching us on KPTS, I want to thank you for staying with us for this period. I think that we'll lose you at noon today. But thanks for staying with us on that. And at noon, we'll call the meeting back to order. Thank you. Welcome back to everyone that's joining us on KPTS. I misspoke. I found out that we've still got KPTS until 1 o'clock, so those of you that stayed with us, I appreciate it very much. This time I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item F, 2019 Exploration Place Update to the Board of County Commissioners.
Morning, Jan.
Hi, it's still good morning. I'm Jan Luth, President of Exploration Place, and happy to be here this morning to give you our annual report. I come before you every year in the fall. As you know, Exploration Place's fiscal year ends on June 30. We don't share the same fiscal year as the county, so I'm here to give you our annual report. First of all, I want to share some of our key metrics from the year. It was really, we had an incredibly fabulous year. We had a total reach of 345,000, which is a 16% increase from our prior fiscal year. 279,000 in our facility, which was a 4% increase, and about 66,000 with outreach education programs all over the region and the state with a 25% increase. We're up to about 5,200 membership households, which is a 14% increase. And the next number is one that I think is important for everyone to understand. We serve about 25,000 people a year through a variety of different programs that we have that provide either free or reduced admission or program fees. They're all supported through some sort of a grant or a sponsor or a donor, but we are able to reach 25,000 people that otherwise would not have any impact from Exploration Place. Some of these things are at the museum, and some of them are through outreach education programs. Our traveling exhibits during the last fiscal year were the Top Secret, License to Spy. We had some great partnerships there with Cybertron IT and Friends University. Toytopia, which was a lot of fun, very popular. We partnered with the Sedgwick County Historical Museum, and they did an exhibit on toys of the future, really from the 50s, and it was all like space related. And then this past summer, we really hit it out of the park with the Science of Ripley's Believe It or Not. I don't have all the data in front of me, but the numbers for attendance for the summer far exceeded anything we expected. It was very, very popular. This coming year, we'll be opening up in about a week Wild Weather, which we expect to be incredibly popular. We're partnering with all kinds of different organizations, the National Weather Service here in Wichita, AccuWeather, and a lot of the meteorologists from many of the media outlets are also partnering with us. And throughout those months, we'll be at Exploration Place working with our visitors. Imaginate opens in January, and that exhibit is all about invention and innovation. And next summer, Rock You, the Institute of Rock and Roll, which should be a lot of fun. We did some work on our permanent exhibits this year. Two key things. We did a refresh of our castle, Where Kids Rule, that had been planned for a while, and we actually opened it up in July with a Storm the Castle event, but we did a lot of different upgrades in there, and we kind of tied things together. There's a tremendous amount that's really about nutrition now, which of course is a big issue with children, and so there's all kinds of things going on in that exhibit now that are tied in with nutrition, and it's still one of our most popular with the young children. And many of you will recall that when we were raising our money for Design Build Fly, we raised more than we needed for that first year of signing all the checks for that exhibit. And we did it deliberately to be able to have a pot of money to be able to go back to make annual changes to that exhibit for the next 10 years. So we've just completed our first round of changes, and one of the things pictured here now are those fuselage shapes, which are really fabulous, but the only people that knew what they were people that were in the industry. There was a sign explaining it, but it was too tucked away. So we created a whole new kiosk area with interactive questions and quizzes, and the fuselages now light up and are really dynamic, and people get to see them. So that's just an example of one of the changes we made this year, and we will be continuing to make those changes each year. We are working diligently on a new permanent exhibit, Heads Up Health. I've been talking about it for a couple years. We're actually under contract moving forward with it, and it's expected to open next November. We already have the big mouth, but we will have a big eye and a big brain and a big ear and a medical health discovery area. So a lot of the two key interpretive aspects of this exhibit are about health literacy helping people understand how to take care of themselves, and the other one is workforce development. Events, we're now having events. I think this past year we had 19 events at Exploration Place. We now realize those are a very, very important kind of like a part of the package of programs that we offer people. It's not enough to just have films and exhibits. We really have to do the events as well. So you can see a variety of images up here on the screen with the Maker Fair and Gingerbread Village and Rock the Dome and Spooky Science. We have kind of an annual cycle. Fiesta Hispania, which just happened to have been last week. We had about 1,000 people. River Flicks, where we're showing images or pictures on the building. Those are all free to the public to come and enjoy. New this year was Touch a Truck. We did that in June. About 20 different businesses and organizations, including Sedgwick County, brought out really huge vehicles for kids to climb on and learn about. It was very popular. We had it out in our parking lot, and we'll be doing that again next year. And of course, Death by Chocolate, mark your calendars, February 29th, our annual fundraiser. A little bit about our education programs, because, you know, at the heart and soul of who we are, it's STEM education. This past year, we had 18 individual gift, grant, and contract education projects. And so some of these, they were not like a one-off. Some of these things were working with classes 3 times a month, going out for the entire school year. Some of them were a school that had a grade that was coming out to us once a month for the entire school year. So each one is a little bit unique and different. It depends on what the organization or the school district is interested in, or what the funder and the grant is looking at. So 18 different ones. That keeps our education team pretty busy. And that education team has reached 92,500 youth. What that means is that it wasn't just kids coming on a field trip to Exploration Place and running through the place or coming with their family. This is when our educators are actually having a program and interacting with the students. It could be on-site or off-site, but 92,000 kids were reached. 21,000 on field trips, which was a 29% increase, about 1,800 summer campers, and 800 homeschool. Homeschool has grown over the years. By January, we expect to have 10 classes a month happening at Exploration Place with homeschool kids. Our Digital Dome Theater films, last year you may recall we talked about the new equipment that we put in, new projection equipment, so that now the visual experience in our Digital Dome Theater is absolutely stunning. And so this past year we showed Great White Shark, Panda's The Journey Home, and Capcom Go, The Apollo Story. Couple building projects. We always have some sort of a building project, you know, 100,000 square feet on 20 acres. There's always something to work on. And this past year, we did a complete renovation of a behind-the-scenes space to be able to make it a really usable, fabulous space, and it's called our Explorer Room. You can see it here filled with people that were in kind of the cocktail party for Death by Chocolate, and then in another image here, you can see it set up for a meeting that was held. It's been used for a lot of different things, and certainly our summer campers occupied it the entire summer. Our future building project, we're very close to signing the contracts and getting started on this project. We are really redesigning our entrance plaza. We're going to be able to make a circle drive, which will be much more comfortable for all of our visitors, whether you're coming with a stroller or you've got a walker or a wheelchair or the inclement weather. So you'll be able to drop people off, go park the car, and then meet them inside. So we're creating this drop-off. The border around it is all that shapes the pathway is all being done with bollards to help protect the glass front building. There'll be a small landscaped area, signage on the building, and really it's going to make that entire entrance plaza much more inviting for our visitors. We expect to dedicate that in January. We had some pretty fabulous recognition this year that you just can't get to share this every year, so it was pretty special. This past year, several of our staff collaborated and we wrote an article that was in an online publication through the Mountain Plains Museum Association that had to do with our education programs and the kind of evaluation results that we're getting from them. Our staff, a group of about 5 different people, presented 7 professional papers at local, state, and national conferences. And we have one staff member who currently serves on a national committee. He's on the Program Planning Committee for ASTEC, the Association of Science and Technology Centers, which is kind of like our parent organization. Last year we opened Design, Build, Fly. This year we got awards for it, which was pretty amazing. We received an Innovation Award from the Wichita Business Journal, an Award of Excellence from the Kansas Museums Association, and one that is incredibly difficult to receive, and that is an Excellence in Exhibition from the American Alliance of Museums. That's like the big museum organization across the country, and they have a competitive process. We submitted, we took a chance, took a lot of time to prepare all the materials. We didn't know if we would get it, but we thought we've got something worthy, and lo and behold, we did in fact receive one of the awards. So coming up in 2020 is our 20th anniversary. It's hard to believe we'll be 20 years old in April, and so there's a tremendous number of events that are planned. We've got 20 events for 20 years. We're going to be dedicating that reimagined entrance plaza. We're hopeful that Moshe Safdie is going to be able to come back for an event with us. We're also looking at creating a new master plan for our 20 acres. A lot of things have changed on that riverfront since this place was created 20 years ago, and I think if you were creating it today, it would have a different look and feel because of how much the West Bank's been activated and the riverfront's been activated. So it's time to rethink that. We're also planning a 20th anniversary gala on October 10th, and as I said earlier, our Heads Up Health permanent exhibit is about to open in November. So our job is to spark that next generation for the STEM workforce, and we do it with a lot of help from our community. We do it with enormous support from all of you, and I want to say thank you for that. We have little gift bags there for you with some little mementos. We also do it with tremendous support from our community. Among them are our Board of Trustees, and our chair is here with us today, Jeff Pyer. So I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Well, thanks, Jan. Is this your last time that you're going to present this?
Yes, sir. This is my last time at the podium.
Very good. When do you retire officially?
It'll be sometime this fall. I'm going to stay until the new person comes, so we're still working through what that date will be.
Very good. Well, we appreciate everything you've done for Exploration Place while you've served there. I do have one concern that I want to address with you all, and that's actually hiring the replacement. The other day I asked a question about hiring replacement for Jan, and the information I got back was that it's a confidential process and they can't tell me anything. Well,
I'm going to let Tim Kaufman come and speak to that.
Well, let me finish my discussion first.
Oh.
Sedgwick County puts about $2 million in Exploration Place every year. In addition, we pay the salary of the director. So an answer coming back saying that it's confidential and you can't tell me what's going on, that's not acceptable to me. As we continue forth, let me explain how that the zoo was handled about a year ago. When it got down to the final couple of folks, 5 or 6, maybe not quite that many, we had at least 2 commissioners, the chairman and the chairman pro tem, sit on the final decisions, or not decisions, the final interviews. And then from there, then the final couple people went to all 5 commissioners, along with the board, and we had an input. And any time that we're putting taxpayers' money into any project, we need an input. So I just want to make sure that you all understand that before you come back to us and say, hey, we hired this and we can't tell you about it, your input, that input is unacceptable to me. I don't know how it is to the rest of the commissioners. So second part of that is we do pay the salary of the director, and I know that it's an important position, but the director of the zoo is an important position too. Probably supervises 10 or 15 times the number of people. So we do not want to have a situation where the board comes to us after having whatever kind of discussions you've had that we're not privy to, and tell us that you're going to pay more than what we're paying to the director of the zoo. So I want to make a couple things very clear on my position. So, Tim, do you have any response?
Tim Kaufman, for the record. Commissioner or Chairman, we're working with a consulting firm, a recruiting firm that is helping us through this process. And one of the things that they've made clear is that this is a little bit different process than the zoo process is because of the nature of the types of candidates that we have. So we've been very careful about confidentiality.
Well, then we need to change the process. I will not have a process that is not open and transparent to our public when we're spending that kind of money. So go back to the drawing board and come back to me and tell me that we've got an open process.
We're continuing to work with those folks to figure out how we can engage everyone that needs to be engaged at the level that they need to be engaged in. We're certainly not ready to make any recommendations in terms of hiring, and we'll continue to work on the process.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you. So just a couple thoughts. First, Jan, what you've done, and so I started working with you immediately when you moved to Wichita when I was in radio. And I thought, this lady is just pugnacious and just illustrious and just effervescent. You're incredible. You far exceeded what the expectations I thought that you would have even at that time. I think everybody in Sedgwick County that's seen the transformation over the last decade, just it's been incredible, truly. The design, build, fly, engaging so many businesses in our whole community into that phenomenal project was inspiring for me to see. Everything else, just mentioning your tenure's been great. So, and to me, it makes me feel really old hearing that we got the 20th anniversary coming up next year, because I remember when that was built as a kid and how excited I was, and I'm thinking, oh my, it was 20 years ago. I'll never forget, Bob Knight was the mayor of the year. He was America's mayor of the year, and that was the backdrop that he chose when he was on that national governing magazine. So I'll never forget that. It was a great big deal. So between that and the arena being 10 years old and the zoo being 50 next year, and then the whole county being 150, we got a lot of birthdays to have next year. And I like calling birthdays much more than anniversaries, because especially with a kid-centric facility and discovery center like yours, I think birthday is a lot more fun to be talking about. In regards to what Commissioner Dennis said, I also share those concerns. I think it is problematic. I hear Tim saying that he is going to address that, but I know particularly for the chairman and myself, when we were running for office in 2016, one of the issues that people had talked about was how do we build better relationships with Exploration Place and with the zoo in particular. That everywhere we went, that was discussed any forum, and I thought that we had addressed a lot of that. Almost immediately when we came, we got back into a long-term agreement that was both favorable to the board and the county from everything. So we feel like we've been there for Exploration Place and the board, but we don't feel in this process the board and Exploration Place is being there for us, and that's very concerning, very troubling that we've been good partners, and for some reason there's been a breakdown of Exploration Place's board being good partners with us, and so it makes me sit back and just wonder, like the chairman said, how we got to this point, why the zoo was so much easier to work with, and why we haven't heard from the Exploration Place board when we've done everything in our power to make sure the life of Exploration Place is great, and that the relationship between the city and between the county and Exploration Place is strong. To not have that is sad, really. So I think it'd be great for us to kind of get an update on why we had this breakdown, what we did to not get the respect from Exploration Place that the zoo gave us, when we've been as every bit as respectful to Exploration Place as we were to the zoo, and they treated us far better. So I hope we can get an answer to that at some point soon.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you for the presentation today, Jan. I just wanted to say up front, I think you'll be very missed, and you're going to be very difficult to replace. And so to the point, I think that the county obviously has a they want to have an input into the process, and that's fine. I support the comments of the chairman on that regard, but I would respectfully disagree. I think the board has actually been very good. They have been providing board members with financial statements, with performance data every single board meeting. I'm on the board. I've never heard concerns of any of my colleagues regarding any relationship between EP and the county. And so I just want to say, I think that we trust. There's a lot of great leaders over there. They're volunteers. They are passionate about Exploration Place, and much like the zoo, we're not experts on science museums. We look to those experts over there to provide expertise and recommendations, and it's somewhat autonomous. We think we're on the side watching it and paying attention, but we're not necessarily driving the bus. And so, with that regard, I would just say, from my perspective, being on the board, I think the board's has been reasonable and rational, and they've done a good job over there. And so, I would just say this: that you continue to raise the bar. You're every single time you come to us, it's increases in performance. And I've been watching this for years, and you continue to raise that bar. I don't know if we can continue this, because I'm more concerned that transition can be tough, and I think you're setting the bar so high. I'm expecting some report at some point going to show a decrease, because how do you keep this up? I don't know. But I would just tell you that I'm proud of Exploration Place. I think it's important for our community. It's about quality of life. It's about creating the next workforce. It's partnering with our schools and helping our kids, and I'm glad we have Exploration Place in our community. So I guess my perspective is it's 99% positive, and to the extent we'd like to have a voice on the process of finding a replacement for you, how hard that's going to be. I think that's a point well taken. But I would just like to give my appreciation to the board and for you specifically, and I hope that you're going to be back next year when we do some of these celebrations. I don't know what your plans are, but I hope you'll be here for part of that. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion we receive and file.
Thank you. I'll second that. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you. I just have a little question about the process. How long was it advertised? One, how long was it advertised? And then how many applicants did you receive?
Off the top of my head, it's been advertised for probably 60 to 75 days.
And where? Where was it advertised?
Professional journals. We used Success Factors, the county's portal, and we also used the Kittleman portal. They're the folks that are helping us with the search. And then it was advertised in multiple professional journals and websites to the museum field, the museum industry. So the target audience, of course, is folks who have led a museum.
Yeah. How many applicants did you receive?
The pool started, I believe, at 77. It narrowed down from there. We had the search committee reviewed 10 applicants, narrowed that down to 7, had 5 of those folks able to meet with us individually, and we're continuing to winnow that field down.
Very good. Well, again, I appreciate the update. I just wanted you to know my concerns when I get an email that says I can't learn something that I asked for. So I don't want that to detract from our support of Exploration Place, because obviously we support it very well. So we've got a motion and a second. I see no further comments. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell? Aye. Commissioner Meitzner? Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item G, acknowledgement of a donation made by Impact Design to COMCARE'S Community Crisis Center.
Morning, Joan.
Hey, good morning,
Afternoon, Joan.
Chairman and Commissioners. Yes, it is afternoon, isn't it? I'm Joan Tammany with ComCare. I'm here today because we received a clothing donation from Impact Designs. This is kind of interesting. Impact Designs is a screening, printing, and embroidery company located within El Dorado Correctional Facility, and they make sportswear apparel for sporting goods stores, and that work is done by eligible inmates. And our relationship with them is we have staff that assist persons with mental illness discharging from the prison setting to the community. Their donation consisted of 50 outerwear jackets for distribution to patients that we serve during cold weather season. They didn't give us an actual cost, an actual price of their donation, but we know what the jackets are, and we're estimating the donation's about a $1,500 impact. we serve a lot of people that just don't have a lot of financial resources, and often will forego outerwear in the winter in favor of purchasing more critical needs such as food and housing. So we're very appreciative of this unexpected and unanticipated gesture from Impact Designs, and so I'm hoping that 50 people enjoy a warmer winter this year. So I'm here to ask that you acknowledge the donation and then authorize the chairman to sign a letter of appreciation.
Thank you very much, Joan. We appreciate you bringing this to us. We want to make sure that we thank Impact Design for their donation. And I make a motion that we acknowledge the donation and authorize me to sign a letter of appreciation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Donald?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner? Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Next item, please.
Item H, renewal of a grant in the amount of $1,030,523 for the Shelter Plus Care Housing Program.
Hi,
Yeah,
Joan.
good morning. It's me again, Joan Tammany with ComCare. This is an annual renewal. This is not something new. It's the renewal of the submission of the grant application in the amount of $1,030,523. It is for Shelter Plus Care. The funding is through HUD, which is the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I do have Maggie Flanders, our housing coordinator, here with me, and Luella Sanders from United Way, in case you have subject matter expert need at the end of the presentation. But Sedgwick County has been, you guys and former commissions and former people in leadership roles have been proponents of supported housing or housing for our population for many, many, many years. In fact, formed the Task Force to End Homelessness. This is a community application. The piece we're submitting to you is specific to the housing funds we manage. The application is due for submission by the community by September 27th. So I'm here to get your approval for the funding for Shelter Plus Care. If you may recall, there is a continuum of care committee within the community that meets regularly, talks about the needs of the homeless population in our community, and collectively they determine what funds the community continues to need, and Shelter Plus Care is one of those. We've been a recipient of this funding. We tried to trace it back. We know it's been 10 to 15 years, if not greater than that. The only change in funding is a slight increase, and that's because the fair market value on housing has increased. So they determine those rates. If the grant's approved and we're awarded this, the funding will assist us with our population of persons with chronic mental health issues, as well as persons with substance use disorders. And the third population that falls into this funding stream is persons with HIV or AIDS. So we have community partners, including Kansas University School of Medicine, their medical practice piece, and Miracles and ComCare are the referring agencies for these vouchers. And we have up to 122 that we can issue each year for permanent housing. So I know last year when I briefed you guys on this issue, there was a question regarding what kind of inspections are required for housings. The way this program works is there's a list of eligible landlords and locations, but the person who wants to be housed gets the option of selecting where they want to reside. At that point, our housing specialist, who is certified as an inspector, goes in, evaluates the property, determines if it meets the HUD guidelines for appropriate and safe housing, and if it doesn't, they work with the landlord to get those issues resolved. If it meets it, the tenant then can accept that housing, and then they annually review that placement against that checklist for safety and affordable housing annually, and if that doesn't continue to stay within the requirements, the person is assisted in getting substituted housing. They can find an alternative place to live. So it's an important program for us. It's a program that works, and I'm here to ask that you approve the submission of the grant application and authorize the following actions if the grant is awarded, and we're fairly confident we'll be rewarded because we've been good users of that funding in previous years. So if awarded, we'd also need acceptance of the grant, authorization of the chairman to sign all the necessary documents, and then to establish the budget authority for that year, and any remaining funds continue to the next fiscal year. So That's what I'm here to ask. If you have any questions, either I or my two peers will be available to you.
Thank you, Joan. I don't see any questions at all. We're familiar with the grant. We're very appreciative that you're submitting it. I move that we take the appropriate action for the submission of this grant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell? Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye.
Thank you. And while I'm here, I just want to take the opportunity. We have awesome staff that work with our housing programs here at Sedgwick County, and I just want to point out Maggie Flanders leads that team. So Maggie, wave your hand.
Very good. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thanks for being here. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item I, resolution and policy for recommendations for at-large advisory board appointees.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we defer that to, I was going to say 2 weeks, but the first week in October is when I would like to.
Very good. Do you have any reason that you need to defer?
Well, yeah, more time to study it. We just had it addressed in our staff meeting yesterday. I don't think there's been time. I haven't been able to put any input. And I don't, if we can avoid crafting policy at the bench, I think that's the best process.
Very good. I do appreciate your comments. I think this resolution is something that we need to do, so I support the idea behind it. If we need a little bit more time to make sure it's crafted exactly the way we need it, I don't know that we've got a lot of appointments that will be coming up between now and the next time that we were able to meet. I was honestly ready to hear the subject today with making some changes, because there does need to be some minor tweaks to it. But I understand that we don't want to make sausage from the bench, so I will second the motion. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to thank the staff for being so swift with crafting this. I know that there was some concern from the bench a couple of weeks ago about our ability to do this in such a quick manner, so I'm excited that it was done so fast. Who knew the government could work fast? So I just want to point that out, that we were able to do at least get it in draft form. And so I too have some changes that I'd like to see. So I will be supporting this in an effort to get it right and have a little bit more time to do so.
It's called the speed of government.
Hey.
I don't see any other comments. We have a motion and a second to defer. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell? Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item J, report of the Board of Bids and Contracts regular meeting on September 12th, 2019.
Afternoon, Joe.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Joe Thomas, Purchasing Director. The meeting of the Board of Bids and Contracts on September 12th resulted in 3 items that we'd like to recommend for your approval. The first item is a bridge improvement for Public Works, and this bridge is located at 53rd Street North between 231st and 247th Streets West. And this recommendation is to accept the low bid from King Construction Company Incorporated, and that's in the amount of $748,180. Item 2 is also a bridge improvement, going back to that first one, this approval of this item is contingent upon approval of the CIP amendment, and that will be brought up to you in the consent agenda item O. Wanted to make that point. Item 2, a bridge improvement for a bridge is located on Broadway between 117th and 125th Streets North, and this recommendation is to accept the low bid from King Construction Company Incorporated. This amount is $1,315,812.80. And our final item is SAP SuccessFactors Employee Central and Employee Central Payroll, which is Human Resources and Enterprise Resource Planning. This recommendation is to accept the quote from HR Focal Point, LLC, for the costs listed and to establish this contract pricing for a period of 5 years. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have, and I recommend approval of these items.
Thank you. Any commissioners have questions for Mr. Thomas? Seeing none, move to approve the recommendations of the Board of Bids and Contracts.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell? Commissioner Meitzner? Chairman Dennis?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Next item, please.
Consent agenda.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tom Stolz with the Manager's Office. Recommend approving items K through U, excluding item R.
Thank you. I move that we approve Kilo through uniform except for Romeo. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner Meitzner?
Aye.
Chairman Dennis?
Aye. Next item, please.
Legislative issues.
Mr. Papoon, we have anything for legislative issues today?
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, we had a wonderful event a week ago this past Monday at the Intrust Bank Arena where we hosted a number of legislators that were on both the Senate Ways and Means and House Appropriations Committee. Sheriff Easter and Jen Wilson and Wendy Hummel all got to speak in support of some of the behavioral health issues that we are concerned about in this region of the state. And overall, I think it was a very nice event and a lot of good interaction between our elected officials and state elected officials.
Very good. I appreciate it. Any commissioners have anything for Commissioner Meitzner?
Just briefly, thanks for that summary, and obviously this is an important item for us all, as we know. I think it's extremely important that our coordination, thanks to Wendy and Jan and the rest of us playing our own individual roles to try to get this thing exposed at the state level, the local level, the business level. It's just vitally important if we're going to push this needle. So that was a good event. Another step, not a big one, but a good one.
Very good. I don't see anything else for legislative issues. Next item, please.
Other.
Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a shout out to the Chamber of Commerce and all of their work that they did for the city to city trip last week. It was really an incredible experience to have an opportunity to travel with about 62 other folks from our community who are engaged with economic development, education, mental health, and homelessness. So it was just a nice trip to be able to connect with some people that I might not have been able to connect with before. I know Chairman and I, it was just a really good trip, and I just want to say thank you so much to the Chamber of Commerce and everybody who had a hand in making that trip possible. I know I learned a lot. I'm excited to share what I've learned with other folks, and I'm excited to go next year, and hopefully other commissioners can join us.
Very good. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This evening at Intrust Bank Arena, Carrie Underwood will be performing with her band, and before that, myself, along with members of my family, some personal friends, I think a couple other elected officials from the City Council across the street are going to be circulating a petition in regards to Donald Wacker. Our very good family friends, the Shoemakers, their daughter was abducted, molested, raped, murdered. Her body was thrown in a field in 1990. One of the two men that abducted her, Donald Wacker, he is up for parole. That'll be this next month, October the 16th in Derby. And we're trying to get as many people in the community to sign these petitions as possible, just so that we can make it clear that we do not want a convicted and frankly, he had an admitted pedophile and abductor on the streets of Wichita. It does not serve anyone in the community well to have him out, particularly those of us in South Wichita that had to endure everything that he did to Nancy and the repercussions, because he would be moving back in with his family in South Wichita. It's a community safety issue. So I have petitions here if anybody here wants to sign, but we'll be collecting them tonight. Our goal is to have 10,000 to 15,000 signatures, and the parole board to petition them to make sure that Mr. Wacker stays in prison where he needs to be after the horrific killing of our friend, and frankly everyone in the community kind of adopted Nancy at the time. So I just encourage everyone to sign it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to comment, based on what Commissioner Cruz said, I totally agree. I had signed up to go to that trip, but because of my situation with my mother, I had to cancel my trip, but I really missed that. I did get to go on 2 city-to-city tours in the past, and I regret not being able to go this year. My time was needed here, however, but I think she went on a similar trip on her own at some point in the recent past to San Antonio as well. So it'd be my intent to go back to San Antonio at some point. Hopefully I can plan a trip down there to kind of see what's going on down south, because of their ability to address mental health in San Antonio is kind of setting the standard for our nation. And so I would like to go down there and experience that and see how they do things down there. So I regret having to miss that trip. I know it's great networking between people on the trip. I think 64 people went on the trip, and I wanted to go, but with respect to trying to learn about mental health, I plan to go down there and do that sometime, I think, on my own. So just wanted to say I regret having to miss the trip, but I'll still plan to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz?
I'm sorry, I really should write down what I need to say. But I don't want to leave here without mentioning that Jenny Wood is coming back tonight at the Botanica. So she has a concert tonight. It starts at 5 o'clock. Actually, doors open at 5. It starts at 6. So this ought to be a really great debut for her. I'm so excited to see her back on her feet and playing and, being a musician like she is. So if you have a chance to get out, tickets I think are about $50, but they go towards her medical expenses. If you can imagine how long she was in the hospital and how many medical bills she has as a musician, not having any insurance is quite cumbersome. So I hope that you can go out tonight. There's also on the 29th at the Bartlett Arboretum, they're also having another opportunity to hear her. So if you can't make it tonight, you could check it out at the Bartlett Arboretum on the 29th.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to echo the comments about our trip to San Antonio. I went on the behavioral health track talking about mental health and the homeless issue. And that's right in the wheelhouse of Sedgwick County, so that's why it was very important for a couple of us to be on that trip. We got to see their restoration center, which is kind of like our crisis center. It was actually what brought about our crisis center, from what I understand, before I got on the commission. And it's a fantastic location. We also got to go over and tour Haven for Hope, where the homeless have a place. It doesn't matter if they have 2 separate portions to the Haven for Hope. One section that's separate they are totally separate. But if you need a place to stay during the night, doesn't matter if you're actually high on drugs, you can't bring any in, you can't bring any weapons in or anything like that. But if you need a place to stay that is secure, anybody can get in it. So you can be high on drugs or alcohol or something, and you still have a place that you can spend the night that is safe and secure. On the other side is where families can stay. And there are a lot of families that are down on their luck and need a safe and secure place that they can stay. What we saw is that they make sure that those families are treated so that they have the same opportunities that all of our families have had. And they've got a school, if they've got a bus that comes through, they pick those kids up first so that there's no stigma from anybody else. They don't know where they come from. They drop them off at the end of the day. The Y runs a daycare center there. And as you see the little bitty kids going into that daycare center, I mean, it can bring a tear to your eye just seeing what's going on down there. They send the kids to summer camp during the summer. So they're trying to make sure that those kids have the same childhood as any other child has, even though that they're in a homeless situation. So these are some things that are going on in San Antonio. I know there's been some discussions here. That's the nice thing about us having a legislative dinner last week, so that our legislators can start seeing these issues. It was the #1 issue on our legislative agenda last year, is behavioral health. I feel certain with the composition of this commission that it'll probably be our #1 issue on our legislative agenda again this year. now that we've got the business and the community involved in it so that they see it. That's what was the greatest thing about going down to San Antonio with the Chamber of Commerce, is now the businesses see exactly what we see every single day in our job. So again, I appreciate very much that the Chamber of Commerce put this trip together so that we could show the other leaders in this area that don't see it each and every day what we see and what our concerns are. The other thing that I wanted to make sure, and I know that Commissioner Howell joins me in this, is that today is the anniversary of the United States Air Force. It is their birthday today.
Go Air Force.
So if you see an Air Force guy, I not only say thank you for your service, but thank you for your Air Force service, because it is obviously the premier organization in the military, which I don't think anybody can deny.
Amen.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Anchors
There's
away.
Right,
No
there's
bias
nobody,
on my
there's
part.
nobody here that's going to
Anchors
say
away.
some obnoxious comment in front of us this time.
So, anyway, that's my 2 cents worth for today. I don't see anything else for other. Madam Clerk, next item.
Executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner Meitzner.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I move that the Board of County Commissioners recess into executive session for 15 minutes under the justification of discussing personal matters of non-elected personnel in order to assist in the hiring process of county executive personnel, and that the board return to this, from this executive session at
101.
1:01.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz? Commissioner Howell? Commissioner